G'day, I'm Paul. Welcome to our biggest dual cab pickup truck bakkie test. We're doing off-roading, we're doing drag racing, but today is all about towing. I want you to walk away from this video knowing which one of these dual cab utes you should be buying if you do need a tow. We've got the new Ranger Super Duty, the new Navara, the new HiLux. We have virtually every car on sale in Australia at the moment to see which one is going to be the most capable when towing a load. Now, before you go assaulting your keyboards about the missing this and the missing that, I wanted to run through the list of cars that are missing that we couldn't get and the reasons why. So the Photons, they were not available, unfortunately, for this test. The Triton, we asked, but they declined to participate in the drag race, the off-road test and the towing test. HD pickups, so the 2500s, they weren't really suitable. They're in a different towing category. We might do something with those a little bit later on. The Shark Performance, it wasn't out when we filmed this. The Raptor, we already had 3 Fords there. We didn't need another one. LTVs, they refused to provide cars to us. And Musso with the EV, it has no towing capability. What are we actually going to be doing? Well, we've got a 3-ton load over here. I'm going to run you through how that works on our hill road a little bit later on. And then we've got our nasty trailer dyne as well, which is going to put a lot of pressure on these dual cab utes to figure out how much fuel they're going to use and then how capable they are towing a heavy load up a big hill. And finally, we're going to do some acceleration and braking testing as well, just to figure out how these perform when they don't have a trailer installed on them. Now, in terms of the order of things, we're going to kick off with the HiLux, but after that, every car will be in alphabetical order, with the exception of the Shark and the Gladiator, because they had lower towing capacity. So we had to take some weight out of the big trailer. All of the performance testing is done on the same day in the same conditions. The dyno testing is done in mixed conditions because we had rain, unfortunately, but it should have minimal effect on the outcome. So let's get cracking. Okay, so we are kicking off with the HiLux. Let me quickly run you through what we're going to be doing here and how the trailer dyne works, and then we'll get straight into it. So HiLux, first cab off the rank with our trailer dyne. The trailer dyne, what is it? Well, here's an explanation that we prepared earlier. Think of this trailer as an anchor. We hook this up to the car. It weighs 1,600 kilos before we even touch any of the controls. What we're then able to do with the controls is vary the weight of the anchor that's behind the vehicle, and that allows us to simulate different loads. In this particular setup here, you can see there's a retarder, there's also a differential, and we're able to then communicate with this using a computer inside the car and vary the load from no load, which is just towing a 1,600 kilo trailer, all the way through to 10 kilonewtons of load. And to put something like that into context, it would be like having a fully loaded dual cab ute going up the steepest hill you can find, and it's constantly pulling it back. So for us, we're going to dial back the load to 3 kilonewtons in an automatic load setting, and that's going to simulate a steep incline that some of these utes are going to fail to overcome. The automatic load setting allows the dyne to temporarily limit load when the vehicle changes gears to gradually apply it again. So it's going to simulate what you will experience driving up a big hill. With this trailer attached and a 3 kilonewton load applied, each vehicle is going to attempt a 0 to 100 run. Some vehicles are going to fail to hit 100 kilometers an hour with the load active, so we're also going to measure 0 to 90 just in case, and then we'll note which ones fail to break the barrier and how long they take to get there. And then finally, what we're going to do is set the cruise control at 100 kilometers an hour with the 3 kilonewton load and do a lap of our circular bowl to see how much fuel they use with this fully loaded at 3 kilonewtons compared to what they used when there was no load on the back at all. So it'll give us some really good numbers and give us a really good idea of how good the dual cab ute is at actually towing a loaded trailer. Okay, so you've got an idea of how the trailer dyne works. We're going to dial in 3 kilonewtons. Going to accelerate through to 100 kilometers an hour. Some of these won't make it to 100 k's an hour, in which case we'll measure their 0 to 90 time. Then what I'm going to do is a lap of the bowl with the 3 kilonewton load set, so we can measure the fuel economy, and then later on we'll also have a look at how that compares to the unladen fuel economy so that we have a comparison there. Each of these cars are going to be driven in a tow mode if it has that available. If it doesn't have it available, we'll just have it in the car's normal setting, because sport mode, a lot of people may not understand this, but a sport mode just changes throttle calibration. If the car needs to go to 100% throttle to meet the cruise control load at 100 kilometers an hour, it doesn't matter if you're in normal eco or whatever, it is just always going to go to full throttle. It's not going to change any of that. Different this year, we've got trailer dyne computer over here. That's what I'll set the load for on the trailer dyne. We've also got this, which is an OBD scanner. So this is going to be measuring coolant temp, It will also measure engine load and a couple of other sort of bits and pieces there, just to give us an idea of what the car is doing when it is under load, just to make it a bit more interesting. Finally as well, when you do see us measuring these times, we're going to be using GPS speed, and that is because the speedo here is not accurate. So each of the cars that we have, I'll give you a reading of what the speedo is at 100 kilometers an hour, but we're going to try and reach 100 kilometers an hour on GPS speed to measure 0 to 100. So anyway, long detailed explanation, but let's give the HiLux a crack. That is all set up and ready to rumble, so here we go. Just started spinning while we're sitting here. So anyway, let's see how we go. I've got all that running. I've got our OBD reader running as well. Let's see if we can crack 100 k's an hour. Here we go. Strong out of the box. 60, 80, 90. We're not going to hit 100 though. It is flat chat here. 97. No, not going to break 100. So only to 90 for the HiLux.
Now I'll be quiet so you can hear what this sounds like accelerating across the quarter mile, and also how quickly it stops from 100 k's an hour.
Now, it is time to attack our hill road with the trailer. So I'll run you through how this is going to work. The trailer has been weighed up to 3 tons total mass. So that is evenly distributed between the axles and then 300 kilos of load on the down bull. So that is what we're going to use on all the utes that have a 3.5 ton towing capacity or 3 ton towing capacity and above. For our dual cab utes that have less than that, which we have a couple, we're going to drop the weight to 2,500 kilos. So that is how this is going to work. This is our hill road. It's representative of a country road. We've used this before on SUV tests and other ute tests. Keep in mind, this is one way, so I'll be wandering all over the road. In reality, if you're driving this, like really, you're not going to be all over the place like I am, but just keep that in mind. There's no other cars coming in the opposite direction. So let's set off and give this a shot and see how it goes. One thing that I want to mention before we sort of start getting into this is how important it is to make sure you get your capacities right when you're looking for a dual cab ute. A lot of people will go tow 3,500 kilos and not realise that if you don't take your capacities into account, you can actually be driving over the limit. And this HiLux is a good example. You've got a GWM, which is your combined vehicle mass. So that's mass of the vehicle with its occupants, fuels, accessories, everything, payload, etc. Then you've also got the gross combination mass, so the GCM. Now that is everything. That's your trailer, your vehicle, and all of its payloads. So that is really important, and if you are buying a caravan, just make sure that you take these numbers into account. We're going to do a video on this to explain it a little bit better, but it's just an important thing to note. Now, HiLux, one of the things that I find so frustrating about this is it doesn't have a four-wheel drive auto mode, which means you're driving everywhere in two-wheel drive high range. And that becomes a problem if you have wet conditions or you're driving on sketchy surfaces, because you're halving the amount of traction you have available when you're accelerating. And that it becomes a problem because it means you're sending everything through the rear wheels and you can get slip conditions when you're towing, and it's just something that you don't really want. So it is a little disappointing they didn't integrate four-wheel drive auto mode here for HiLux, but so far this actually feels really quite confident, and there's a number of reasons for this. So 500 newton meters of torque, it's a really strong diesel engine. Right now, pulling out of this gully, a lot of utes struggle here. This is really just picking up and moving well. Because with this latest generation, they really didn't change much. It means that it's retained its lighter mass, which is just over 2 tons. So you've got 500 newton meters and 2 tons. it's saving, you know, 200, 300, 400 kilos. There's just a kangaroo there. 200, 300, 400 kilos compared to some of the other dual cab utes here with similar outputs. So that means it's going to be a bit punchier behind the wheel. The ride feels excellent. They updated the ride. They have a comfort and a sort of load hauling setting for the ride depending on which grade you go for. This one has the comfort setup and it feels really comfortable with this amount of weight over the back of it through that down ball. So I've done a great job with this, and it is surprisingly walking through this very easily. Now here comes our big hill. This one's a tricky one because it's a 15% grade. It is very steep. We're going to be putting the car under maximum stress to get up here. So I'm basically just going to pin the throttle and we'll see whether it gains speed. So here we go, 15.5% grade. Let's drop down a gear. Front end still feels like I've got a connection with the road. A lot of times if you're in a ute like this where the back end is down and you're accelerating, the front can feel very light and it feels like it wanders, whereas this feels good. And look, it is accelerating 46, 47. It's getting up the hill here. I don't feel like it's underdone. So you know, you can have all your fancy utes with all their new features and gadgets and stuff, but this actually feels quite confidence inspiring with this type of load on the back. They missed a trick not putting an integrated brake controller in HiLux. A lot of other vehicles in the segment are now starting to get integrated brake controllers. It means you don't need to spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars on installing all the wiring and you know, basically drilling into your new car to fit a brake controller. But you have to do that here with the HiLux. So the good news is most of the components are in this same location, so there's nothing sort of too crazy there. And it comes with a lot of the pre-wiring. All right. Now, we've got a long descent here. This is where I'll be testing things like engine braking, just to see how willing it is to do engine braking on a long descent. There's no paddle shifters here, so it's just done through the gear shifter. So that's holding third at 80. It's doing a reasonably good job with that. Let's slow it up a touch. Drop it back to second. Yeah, nice. It's doing a decent job there with the engine braking as well. So this particular spec of the HiLux has the 48 volt mild hybrid system. So that gives you just a little bit of torque fill when the car's off boost, and it's charged every time you slow the vehicle down. So it doesn't sort of cost you anything to charge it. It just gives you just a little bit of extra pep before the car comes on boost. Yeah, so look, this is really good. HiLux has always been a really good all-rounder and a decent performer, and it's good to see that nothing has changed here, and it feels just as confident now as the previous generation of this car. And then we round things out down the bottom here with some bumps that we do about sort of 60 or 70, just to see what it feels like when you get a few of those consecutive hits. Yeah, a tiny bit rowdy there, but yeah, nothing too crazy. So there you go, 3 ton on the back, piece of cake in the HiLux. Big V8. It's the only V8 in this group, the Silverado, so it's going to make a big old racket. It is having an issue here with the trailer, so it keeps coming up saying trailer disconnected, then it says it's connected and disconnected. So I remember we had this issue with the last Silverado we had as well, so clearly something they need to sort out and fix. This shouldn't have an issue getting to 100. I'm going to leave it in four-wheel drive auto mode. Just as a friendly reminder though, this is the ZR2 6.2 litre V8, almost 650 newton meters of torque, over 300 kilowatts of power. Yeah, so ZR2 limited to 3,500 kilos towing capacity. So really you don't have as much towing capacity as even stuff like a Super Duty, but I think you're buying this primarily for off-road. This is a car that conquered Beer O'Clock Hill, so if you want to check that video out, you can have a look at that as well if you want. Alrighty, let's set our load, 3, and let's give this a shot. God, sounds good. So good. There's 90, and there's 100. No dramas at all.
Now onto some acceleration testing and braking testing.
V8 time with the Silverado ZR2 or ZR2, depending on part of the world you're from. Yeah, look, naturally aspirated V8 with, you know, everything that's going on with fuel prices and stuff like that. It's, you know, these things are becoming a bit of a dying breed because, you know, you look at what Ram's done with the 1500 moving away from a V8 to a six-cylinder. Six-cylinder is better by most metrics, but it's just not a V8. And there is just something about still being able to get around in a V8, to listen to it. If you're willing to pay the price for the fuel, why not? So now the interesting thing with this particular spec of the 1500 is that it can only tow 3,500 kilos. And I say that because your other 1500 variants can do 4,500, so matching Ranger Super Duty. So that is a slight compromise you need to make, but you know, I don't think a lot of people are towing that much, but if you are buying one of these, just keep in mind that there's not much more that you can do with this compared to a standard dual cab ute. So I've got it in tow haul mode. So far it feels pretty good. The ride is fairly comfortable. Steering is quite heavy, and the steering's quite heavy regardless of whether you're towing anything or not. I don't know why they've sort of dialed in so much weight, but it's probably just to give this a bit of differentiation to sort of the Ram, which is quite light in comparison. All right, coming out of our hairpin gully here, we'll give it a kick on the way out. And it's digging deep. Yeah, that V8's got just over 600 Newton meters of torque, so nice little slab to be playing with. Feels very effortless though, and good gearbox as well, so it's changing gears confidently and sort of getting us moving without too many dramas. That sounds so good. Now we've got our climb coming up. What I'm going to do is just open that back window so I can hear the exhaust bouncing off the trailer. Going to give it an absolute kick here. So 15.5%, here we go, and flat to the board. Yes. Yes. That sounds so good. Oh, that is heavenly. That is unreal. Yeah, it's not overly fast. Naturally aspirated V8, it sort of has to work for it, but my God, it sounds so good. Okay, let's see what this engine braking is like. So we've got an L mode there, and then paddle shifters here on the steering wheel. So the engine braking is doing a great job. The good thing with these petrol engines is you've got a really big rev band to work with for engine braking, so this one's nice and confident. Yeah, look, the ride's good as well. I did notice there when we were coming over some crests though that the front feels very high, and I don't know what this looks like on the outside when it's accelerating, but it does feel like the front is quite lifted. So you might need something like a weight distribution hitch to help sort of level that out a little. Okay, bumpies through here. Yeah, a little bouncy on the front there, which leads me to believe that it probably is quite a soft front end. But yeah, look, overall that is very straightforward towing 3 tons with the Chevy Silverado. Okay, Ford Ranger time. V6, Ford has killed the current generation bi-turbo 4-cylinder, so this is kind of the default option now. And it's a good engine. They've ironed out all the kinks in this, so we featured this in our first test, and here it is again in the second test. So I'll be really curious to see how this compares to all the other newcomers in this segment, because there's much bigger tests this time around. So I'll be keen to see whether it is worth the big price difference. You know, you are getting a V6 diesel, but it is a big step up in terms of price. So I'm going to run this in four-wheel drive 4A. So it basically is four-wheel drive, high range on sealed surfaces. You can't run a lot of these other sort of part-time four-wheel drive vehicles in four-wheel drive high range unless you are on an unsealed surface. And if you want to find out why, we actually shot a video. You can click up there to watch that. That explains how it all works, or the QR code on the screen. So we've got this in tow mode as well. We're good to go. From memory, this broke through 100 k's an hour last time, so got the Silverado chase car there for the camera guys. Okay, there's 90. 99. What? It's not going to break through 100. That is crazy. That is crazy. I'm pinned to the board here. I don't think that broke through 100. Wow, okay. There you go. That's interesting. All right, we'll set the cruise, get our fuel economy run. Now, one thing I want to check, I'm going to come to a stop here and change this to normal mode, just to show you there is no difference there between tow and normal in terms of, I guess, power and torque delivery when you are flat to the board. So I'm going to reset the load here to 3 kilonewtons, and we're going to try accelerate through to 100 k's an hour again. So that's just in normal mode now. There is no sport mode here, so here we go. All right, so it's 50. 60, 70, 80, 90, 7, 98, 99, 99. No. There you go. Same thing.
Now I'll be quiet so you can have a listen to the acceleration run and also a break from 100.
A little while back we shot a video where I sort of bought Dad a Ranger Sport V6, and Mum and Dad did a trip sort of halfway around Australia effectively with their caravan. Caravan weighs a little over 3 tonne. It's fantastic. So they put like 13,000 k's on it with the van, and it did exceptionally well. So the only accessories we had fitted to it were was the ARB commercial bull bar and a roller tray cover, and that's about it. Just shows you that straight out of the box these things are good at what they do, towing and doing it day in, day out. So yeah, pretty impressed with how their car is going. How's this going though? Well, feels pretty confident so far, and the ride feels better than it does in the Amarok. So there must be a degree of tuning difference there, because it doesn't feel sort of anywhere near as choppy as it did in the Amarok, and it's fairly settled. This also has the trailer assist feature that allows you to reverse park your van or your big trailer using just this little joystick here. That was part of a package that I got on Dad's Sport as well. I'll give that a kick in the pants. Nice. Yeah, so part of a package I got for Dad's Sport too. So ironically, they just never ended up using it, but it's a good feature there just in case you actually ever need it. Hey, do you want to buy a Ford Ranger? Well, you need to scan the QR code on the screen. We're going to be able to get you a great deal. There's stacks of these in stock, and we get great pricing through dealers around Australia. So scan the QR code, have a chat with our Brisbane-based team, and they will hook you up with a deal to the point where really you only go to the dealer to pick up your car. we'll save you the money. We can organise finance for you as well. So please scan the QR code, get in touch, and let me know how you went. Now this hill should be no problemo. Roll in, punch the throttle. There we go, 30, 40, and 50. Yeah, cool. Pulling along very nicely. Not a complaint in the world, and very comfortable at it. Now, engine braking test, so no paddle shifters, you're just using these buttons on the side of the gear stick. There's third gear at about 70 k's an hour, giving us a nice bit of engine braking. So, yeah, very steady and consistent. Probably one of the things I appreciate the most about this and things like the LandCruiser 70 series, these models were launched before the requirement for all the annoying safety stuff. So outside of a lane departure warning, which is easy to switch off, this doesn't have driver monitoring systems and all the other crap that is now required, because it is ironically very distracting. So if you want something that is less distracting, this is probably the way to go. Okay, bouncy section through here. Yeah, it feels nice and composed. A little soft on the front end, but it's kind of forgiven simply because it is just so good everywhere else. You've got just a little bit of softness there, but it really isn't anything worth noting. So yeah, this is a good all-rounder. It is the right engine for this car, and unlike the Super Duty, which feels really slow with this engine, this is right where it needs to be in terms of responsiveness. Okay, Ranger Super Duty. We'll see if this can crack 100. So yeah, curiously, Ranger Wildtrak was able to crack 100, that's V6 diesel. This is also the same V6 diesel, 600 newton meters of torque, but less power, 154. And it weighs significantly more, so just under 2.7 tons, and that's before you put a tray and other accessories on it. So I think it's gonna have its work cut out for it. We'll see if it'll actually crack 100. We did do a review of Ranger Super Duty where we put it on a trailer dyne at 6 kilonewtons, and it struggled a bit there, but we'll see how it goes here. So, all right, I think we're ready to go. 30, 40, 50, 70, 80, well, starting to slow down, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 97, 96, 97. No, not going to break 100, so let's reset for fuel economy.
Now let's do a performance run and a braking test.
Ranger Super Duty. I think a lot of you are watching the video to see how this performs. So this is one of the few utes here that'll actually do 4,500 kilos brake towing capacity. By the way, I've got it in towing mode. Now that's important because yes, you can do GWM upgrades and spend a lot of money on other dual cab utes to get them, you know, to carry more load or to tow more, but this really will just come straight out of the factory towing this, in theory, effortlessly, right? Unfortunately, it is a little more complicated than that because while this shares the same engine as other Ranger V6 variants, it does have 600 newton meters of torque, but it's down on power, 154 versus 180 odd in a standard Ranger. In addition to that, the base weight is just under 2.7 tonnes, and that's before you add a tray on it or any accessories. So you're basically fighting with your hands behind your back because you've got an extra, 500 kilos or so once you add it all in compared to a normal Ranger, and it's down on power. So it is going to struggle a little bit, especially if you then go and tow beyond 3.5 tonne, which a standard Ranger will do. So we'll see how it goes, but so far so good. Sort of on this easier stuff, it's been pulling along quite nicely. The most important thing is under the vehicle, you've got a lot more rigidity and a lot more tolerance for that extra weight. And during our Ranger Super Duty single car review, if you do want to watch that, either scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link in the description. We actually got it up on a hoist and I ran viewers through all the things that have changed. And it is a lot of work has been done beneath the vehicle to actually give it the strength that it needs to carry this much weight and up to 1.8 tonnes of payload. So out of our gully here, that is pinned to the board. Yeah, that feels very slow. That is unfortunate side effect to this engine and carrying this much mass. It doesn't feel overly quick, so it doesn't need to be fast. I just want to make sure that it's confident. So we'll see how it performs when we get to our hill climb in a second. Okay, the hill climb, 15.5%. I am pinned. Let's see how it goes. Wow, that is slow. 40 k's an hour, and it's basically go. I need to wheel it along. Yeah, it's getting there. It just feels very leisurely. And this has capacity to tow another 1.5 tonnes plus have payload in it. Yeah, I just think it would be really struggling if you loaded it up beyond this. It would just feel quite slow. So, yeah. Not overly impressed with that. I think it just needs a bit more poke out of that engine. If you look at Super Duty products in the States, they have big meaty diesel engines. This is basically a carryover with less power, which is not a good combination to have when you're throwing all this extra capacity at it. All right, our long hill, try and pick up a bit of speed. That's pinned to the board again. It's taking forever to get moving. All right, 70, 80. All right, now let's have a look at our engine braking capacity. I remember when we did our single car review, engine braking didn't feel overly strong when it had a lot of load on it. So here with 3 tonnes, it's doing a reasonable job. Yeah, so it's holding there at 74 k's an hour. One of the things they've done a fairly good job here on is the ride, and the ride feels quite compliant and good, and that's despite the fact this has a lot of strengthening beneath the skin, including with those dampers. So the fact that they've been able to retain ride compliance, I think, is great. We'll see how it goes over this bumpier section down the bottom, but so far this is really soaking up everything beautifully. Right, and that tow mode's doing a good job of just holding everything together. So here are the bumpies. Yeah, it feels really nice and composed and settled. Yeah, very planted. Quite impressed with that. So, Ranger Super Duty. Yeah, look, good overall. I just think it just lacks punch. They've missed a trick trying to sort of just shoehorn this engine in. They should have gone and tried to find one of those bigger diesels out of the States. F-150 time. We've got it in trailering / hauling mode. Love these names. So 3.5 litre V6 twin turbo petrol here. Almost 700 newton meters of torque. This is a beast of an engine. Kind of has to be. Payload is okay, but it's the towing capacity, 4,500 kilos, where it really shines. So, all right, set our load. This will get through to 100 k's an hour without too many dramas. We'll see how quickly it does that. All righty, I think we're good to go. All right, here we go. Oh, she is quick. Nice. There's 80, 90, 100. No problems at all. Alrighty, let's do our fuel economy run.
Now let's do some performance testing and braking tests.
Another one from the 4,500 kilo gang. That's what I'm calling them. The F-150. This is basically the facelifted version of this car. They had a litany of recalls and problems with the first round of this because these are converted in Australia from left-hand drive to right-hand drive. And the company they chose to do that obviously didn't do a very good job at checking everything that needs to be checked for it to comply with. Get that wallaby out of the way, to comply with the Australian standards. So anyway, we're here now, and this one should be significantly better. I think they've learnt a lot from that first round. So this is a petrol, so 3.5 litre turbocharged V6 petrol. It is an explosive engine. Like, it has so much torque. It is fantastic, almost 700 Newton meters of torque, 300 kilowatts of power. It's a beast of a thing, but it also weighs a lot, 2,600 kilos, and with a payload of just 700 kilos. But you do get that 4,500 kilo brake towing capacity, and that's where, you know, this thing really excels. You load it up and it's going to be able to tow a very big load. But as we discovered with our trailer Dyne, it's going to use a fair bit of fuel while it's doing it. So I've got it in tow/haul mode. It's already starting to go back through the gears as we go down this hill into our little gully. Give the throttle a little nudge out of here as well. Nice. Oh, that is hoofing. Yeah, very nice. That's one of the advantages of these American pickup trucks. They've all got four-wheel drive auto mode, so you can either leave it in two-wheel drive high range to save on fuel, or you just whack it in 4-auto and it will manage torque between the front and rear axle for you, and that's on both sealed and unsealed surfaces as well. Okay, I reckon it's going to destroy this hill. Let's find out. So full throttle, here we go. Yeah, it is winding up. There we go. It's on boost. Bit like the Ram. Once it's on boost, it is singing. Almost feels like we're going to launch off the top of the hill here. Oh, nice. That is unreal. That is so much torque. It is fantastic. On the ride front, it is excellent. It is just so well tuned. Where the Ram and the Chevy were both good, this certainly feels better. And you know, when you're towing this much weight, if you do want to be towing more, you really want to be comfortable. And if you've got a horse float or something like that, you don't want to be bucking about all the time. This just feels really nice and comfy from where I'm seated. Okay, manual mode is on. You've got little gear shifters here on the steering wheel. Yeah, being a petrol, you've got a nice big rev band to work with, so it's holding us nicely there at 65. Go up to the next gear, that's third. Sort of holding us around the 70k an hour mark, so yeah, very nice. So I'm predicting here on this bouncy section that it should actually feel pretty decent, so given the rest of the ride along that hill road was good. Oh, that is fantastic. Oh, that is so good. That is genuinely impressive how well that handles with the trailer on. Nice. It's a big old chunk of change though, a little over 160 grand. This is the second GWM we have here. Outside of the plug-in hybrid Cannon Alpha, this is the standard Cannon Ute. They upgraded the engine in this to output 480 Newton meters, up from a little over 400. So still a 2.4 litre diesel. This has the benefit of running as a four-wheel drive, basically on sealed surfaces, but when you do put it in eco mode, it'll run as a two-wheel drive. So got it in towing mode at the moment. You know, what is this weigh? We're talking about 2230, so it is fairly heavy for that torque output, so I think it's probably going to struggle a little bit here to reach 100. Probably won't break 100, but we can only try. So we'll set the load and we'll see what happens. All right. Fires out of the box, all right. So there's 30, 40, 60, 80, 90. Oh, will it break 100? 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 97, 97. No. All right, cool. We'll reset for fuel economy.
Now onto some acceleration testing and a brake test.
Okay, so I'm just switching drive modes here in the GWM Cannon. It knows there's a trailer attached because it's disabled some of the safety aids, but there is no sort of drive mode that I can find specifically for towing. So, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. Now, almost 500 newton meters of torque, but almost, well, just over, sorry, 2,200 kilos. So it is on the heavier side, and having a little less torque there won't help it. But you know, so far, sort of coming out of this little section where we start, it's actually fairly responsive. It's probably just the ride that I'm noticing immediately. It is just so firm, and I don't know why it's so firm, but yeah, it is super firm. And I think now that GWM is actually doing a whole lot of local ride and handling tuning, literally at this proving ground, I think that it's going to make a difference for them, because you know, you can take some of the tuning stuff that you learn from things like Canon Alpha and then translate it here into Canon to sort of to try and make it all feel uniform and the same, I guess. So all right, coming up to our gully just here. Okay, I'll give it a little kick out of here. This has a full-time four-wheel drive system, so you leave it in just the normal mode, it will stay as a 4A effectively, and then if you put it into eco mode, it'll switch to rear-wheel drive. But you're getting that added traction there that is now sort of fairly commonplace in this segment for dual cab utes. Steering actually still feels really good. It doesn't sort of feel too light at that front end. Wallaby. Okay, let's see whether it'll be willing to climb our steep hill here. Okay, it's flat to the board. Yeah, look, it's okay. Yeah, 45, 46. Yeah, it's sort of stuck at that 45 marker there. Could do with just a little bit more punch, but it doesn't feel intimidating or like it's sort of it's putting me in a position where I'd be worried. I actually feel perfectly confident with it. It's sort of moving along really nicely. Now for engine braking, we've got paddle shifters and enough gears here that we should be able to do decent engine braking, but even there at 70 k's an hour, it won't let me go into third. Try slowing down to see what point third is. Wow, still won't let me get third. It'll be down at 50 k's an hour. Yeah, I think that gearing could probably be looked at as well, or at least allowing us to enter that gear at a higher rev limit just to get the advantage of engine braking. Because fourth doesn't have enough engine braking there to keep it slow above 60. And find a little stretch through here with the bumpy stuff. You can kind of hear in my voice that it is very busy and jittery, and look at that, sort of all over the place there. So yeah, look, this will benefit from a tune, and hopefully they get onto that pretty soon, because the rest of the package is actually pretty good. You got 4A, it disables all the annoying safety stuff when you're towing. It's good value for money. What, under $50,000 drive away to get a car that will tow 3.5 tons. I mean, it's pretty impressive. Okay, plug-in hybrid time. So Canon Alpha plug-in hybrid. These things have explosive acceleration because you've got a big battery, an internal combustion engine, an electric motor. It kind of all just pairs together to give you that really big punch. which is all great when the battery's full. When the battery is empty, you'll have periods where, you know, if you drain the battery on a really long, steep, continuous climb, you're then just relying on the internal combustion engine, which is a lot of weight to move around. So this will get to 100, no dramas, I think, and it'll get there quickly. It's just, let's see how it goes when we've done our 2 laps of the track here as well, both in terms of economy and also how it feels in terms of being able to maintain that speed. So I've got everything set up. I'll pop this onto 3 kilonewtons and we will hit the hammer. Okay, towing mode is on. Let's give this a shot. Here we go. Away we go. Far out. Sean can't keep up. There's 100 k's an hour. My God, it's all happening here. That is so funny. Sean couldn't keep up with me and I had 3 kilonewtons of load on the back and he had a big old V8. So, all right, let's set this cruise control on and we should be good to go. Oh, that's right. Cruise control doesn't work when this is in tow mode. That's annoying. All right, I'm just gonna have to manually run it here. We'll reset the fuel economy. Yeah, the fact that you have to not have cruise control when you're towing, I just think is really not very good. So hopefully that is something they can fix with the software update, because it is pretty frustrating.
Now let's see how quickly these accelerate over the quarter mile and also how quickly they stop from 100 k's an hour. Okay, Cannon Alpha plug-in hybrid. Just to make a note of this, both this and the BYD Shark, which are the 2 plug-in hybrids we have here, we charged them both last night, so they've both got pretty much full batteries as well. So just a mental note. So this is in tow mode, which disables some of the safety features, including cruise control, which is a little bit annoying. You know what, there are so many utes here and it is hard for me to know all of them off the top of my head. So we've got our little cheat sheets here and I've just been keeping track of prices and stuff. For not that much more than what you're paying for a lot of other dual cab utes here, you can have this at under $70,000. In fact, it's, where are we? Yeah, under $70,000, and you are getting 300 kilowatts of power, 750 newton meters of torque, you know, a mammoth battery with vehicle to load capability. You've got a 3,500 kilo brake towing capacity. I mean, it really is quite well equipped. And you look at this interior, it is just insane how much they've fitted to here. So pretty impressive from that point of view. But what is it like in terms of driving when you're towing? So immediately I can feel the ride. It is super firm and busy. And you know, one of the advantages we have here at this proving ground is this is actually where GWM does all its ride and handling tuning for the Australian market. And they're currently working on stuff, and I think this car is going to need to benefit from a tune for towing specifically, because yeah, it just feels quite busy. And when you think about, you know, if you want to buy this as a family car, you're doing a lot of towing with it, you just don't want your kids to feel uncomfortable in it. You just want it to feel nice and comfy while you're driving. But yeah, it is the acceleration that I think is going to win a lot of people over. So we'll give it a punch out of here. Whoop. It is like ready to pull the trailer off its drawbar. It is so quick. It is so quick. So yeah, it is remarkable how much pace this has. Until you've driven a plug-in hybrid like this or the Shark, you don't realise just how fast they are. They're kind of like dual cab supercars. It makes stuff like towing just completely effortless. Okay, now this should be interesting. What is it like here on our hill? I'm just going to flatten the throttle there. 40, 50, 60, 70. That is crazy. That is crazy how much acceleration you get out of that. Now, the difference between this and the Shark is that this has an electric motor sandwiched inside the transmission. That means it actually has a regular drive line that runs down the center. It means you can have front rear diff locks, and it basically is a normal car with just electric assistance and a big battery as well. The Shark, on the other hand, has two electric motors, one on the front axle, one on the rear axle, and then an internal combustion engine that acts as a generator. It can also sometimes directly drive the front wheels, but that's it. You might be asking yourself then, well, what happens if I run out of battery? Will this just be a 2-litre engine trying to sort of pull all of this? Well, not quite, and there is a caveat there. If you do sort of get it low, all plug-in hybrids work the same, where they have reserve energy, so they all keep at least sort of between 10 and 20% in the battery. What happens when you do get to that marker? Well, if you get down to that 20% mark, it will still give you that explosive energy. There's still about 3 kilowatt hours worth of energy left there, so you can still feel that acceleration and move. Then as soon as you get off the throttle, because you're not going to be on the throttle for 5 or 10 minutes straight, it will then charge the battery again to that 10 or 20% mark. So you always have that energy available regardless of where it is. Where you will have an edge case is if you're doing a really long climb and the battery is flat and you're getting it out of its reserve, because at that point it has no extra energy left and it needs to use its internal combustion engine, and that is when you'll either be using a 1.5 litre in the Shark or a 2 litre in this, trying to move your vehicle's weight, which here is 2,800 kilos, it's enormous, plus your 3.5 tonne load or 3 tonne load in this case. So it is really going to feel like it struggles then, but that is a very rare instance that you're going to hit those cases. Now, what's it like for engine braking? So let's have a look here. Because you've got a standard transmission here, it's able to do engine braking. The Shark doesn't have that, it can only do regen. So I'll be curious to see how the Shark feels compared to this, but from an engine braking point of view, this is great. Now our bumpies, yeah, it's feeling super busy down here, and then we've got our sine waves as well. Yeah, a little bit bouncy, but it's more just the busyness and the firmness of the ride that is getting a little bit tiresome. So yeah, look, a great package for this price. I just think it's the ride that they need to work on. Okay, this is going to be fun. I haven't driven one of these before. This is literally the first time I've driven it. It is the Ineos Grenadier Quartermaster. Trailmaster, I think it is the spec that we're in. So this is the ute version. It's got a big chunky BMW diesel engine, so 3 litre 6-cylinder. It is a great engine, one of my favourite engines out there. So I'll be curious to see how this pans out, because you know, this has a lot of punch for what it is, and it is designed to do off-roading, towing, all that sort of stuff. So it really should be at home here in this environment. So we'll get all this set up and we'll have a crack at it. Quietly confident this will break 100 k's an hour, but you never know. Yes! Little 4-wheel slip off the line there. There's 80 k's an hour. Alrighty, and 90, 97, 98. Oh no! It's not going to break 100, 98. Back to 97. Oh, okay, that's disappointing. All right, set load, get our fuel economy. Now let's go 0 to 100 and also a stop from 100 to 0. Now, the Ineos, you know, 3.5 tonne brake towing capacity, live axles front and rear, Nice meaty BMW diesel engine, but can it tow confidently here with this load? We will see. So far it's feeling very good. It's nice and responsive, and it's sort of getting up and moving very easily. I just love how unique this car is. You've got this switch bank up the top here with, this interior looks fantastic. I think they've done a really cool job with the design. One of the things you will notice, it has the deadest steering of every car here. You just don't feel anything. So while live axles are great for off-road driving, the way they've set up this steering with that suspension combination just makes it feel very numb to operate. So not the end of the world, but it just feels like an old Defender, which is I guess the vibe they were going for. It's worth noting as well, at just over 2,700 kilos, this is a very heavy vehicle, and it is a big vehicle as well, so you expect that kind of mass, but it is sort of slightly limited on payload compared to some of its competitors. So 830 kilos compared to over a ton for a lot of other cars in this class. All right, give it a punch out of the gully here. Nice. That is really nice and strong. Very good. Gearbox tune here is fantastic. It's just doing a great job rifling through the gears when we need them. Yeah, it's a really good, strong engine. I love this engine. It is just paired beautifully to this car. Okay, here's the real test. How's it going to perform on our monster hill? All right, we'll line it up. Kick. It's picking up speed. We'll see what it does when it grabs fourth. And that was third. Yeah, this is pulling along great. This is such a good engine. Yeah, this is a bit of a surprise package, to be honest. It is moving along with this load very effortlessly. I thought it would struggle a lot more than this just with those numbers on paper, but it is doing a great job. Okay, engine braking, what is it like? We'll slide that over. Drop that down a couple of gears. Okay, so that's fourth at 70. It's holding that speed, which is good. Love a tiny bit more engine braking there, but it's not too bad. Okay, and then the bouncies down here. Let's see what this feels like. Okay, there it is. Very good. That suspension is fantastic. They've done an exceptional job with this. Genuinely surprised. I think this is fantastic, and feels like one of the better cars here for towing this kind of load. Okay, D-Max. So the BT50, that is like a lightweight version of this D-Max. So this is heavier. I think it will be a little bit different. This has a stop-start system. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'll pop that load on. There's no tow or haul mode here, so it's just basically stand on throttle. So with 450 Newton meters, this is kind of middle of the pack there in terms of torque output, but it is lighter than some of the other dual cabs here, so it has that advantage too. And it is kind of a dated engine, but does the job. So we'll see what happens. Unruly off the line there. All right. Yeah, it's 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97. I'm through the firewall. I can just hear the air conditioning switch off then, because it's trying to give the engine as much power as it can. 97 is as fast as that's going to go. So reset fuel economy and we'll do our lap of the bowl.
Now on to the 0 to 100 and braking tests. Now the trusty D-Max, this thing has withstood the test of time. Not a great deal has changed, and that's the fascinating thing with these Japanese car brands. I think they've been very much caught off guard from the Chinese, and you know, maybe it's a good thing. They don't change a great deal, but let's see. So yeah, 3.5 ton brake towing capacity. This is one of the few here that you can only drive in two-wheel drive high range. So we don't get much of a choice there. 450 newton meters of torque, so it's also down compared to a lot of the other competitors in this segment, and 2170 in terms of the mass, so it's not exactly light. So let's see how it goes. Yeah, I'm already having to really dig deep here, pinned to the board right now, and there's not a whole lot going on. So yeah, okay. Okay, let's see how it goes out of the gully here. All right. Oh, struggling with traction. All right. Yeah, it's one of the things I noticed when we were doing the trailer dyne. It's happy to dig deep and just keep in it, and it really doesn't overheat the engine. Like it is. It's a bit of a quiet achiever from that point of view, so it means that you can confidently stay stuck in it. So, but you see right now we're just losing speed, and I could not be any harder on the throttle there. But then it drops down a gear and sort of picks up a bit of speed there. So, look, I mean, they could potentially go for a gearbox with more ratios to take advantage of the torque bands, but it seems to be fairly active when it needs to be. So, we'll see how it goes once we get to our hill. Okay, moment of truth. Here we go. Yeah, it seems to be when it grabs the next gear that it starts to struggle a bit, but it is staying in that 40 k's an hour. Yeah, I mean, it's barely accelerating, but I don't feel terrified by it, which is good. I mean, there's a difference there when it's struggling and you feel like you're not actually going to make it up the hill, whereas I don't feel that at the moment. I feel like it's got enough to just stay in it and keep going. I think that's that sort of confidence level that you get here. Okay, what does it look like for engine braking here? No paddle shifters. These ratios are just... All right, there we go. So I just slow down to 65 to get it to drop back to second to give us sort of meaningful engine braking. So if I go up to third, it basically just starts sort of running away. So I think, yeah, potentially a different gearbox here, just with more gears, will give them the ability to really have that torque when they need it for acceleration, and then better engine braking when you need it as well, because it's hard to sort of go between second and third there because it just won't really hold it for long enough. Now in terms of the ride, let's see what it feels like down here. So far it's actually been not too bad. It is a little bit firm. You can feel like it is sort of really working the suspension. Let's see what it feels through this, what it feels like through this choppy section. Yeah, it's not too bad. So it is on the firmer side, but it is soft enough to take those undulations at speed with enough grace. So yeah, look, I guess this is a bit of a known one. It's trusty. There's not much that really need to think about with this, but
yeah, it really is starting to show its age, and I think they just need to have a look at getting a 4A mode so you're not lumped with just two-wheel drive and just a bit more poke from that engine. Okay, Jack T9, this is another one that is rear-wheel drive but can be put into four-wheel drive high range only on sealed surfaces, so it's going to be a little tricky to get traction off the line here. Also not huge towing capacity, 3,200 kilos, so one of the lower ones here. In addition to that, 410 newton meters of torque, also on very much on the lower side, so I think it's going to struggle a little bit, but we'll see what happens. So pop that up to 3 kilonewtons. Alright, here it is. Okie dokie. So 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. It's slowing right down here. 88, 90 just, 92, 93, 94. Yeah, it's not going to go any faster than that. 95, that's about it. All right, let's do our fuel economy run. Just noticing here, this lane departure system is so bad. It just keeps trying to pull me in over here. You know, while you're towing, that stuff shouldn't be active at all, and then it's just constantly beeping. Yeah, pretty frustrating. This is absolute nonsense as well. It claims that it's averaging 8.8 litres per 100 k's, which is just not even remotely possible because we've got the trailer dyne set at 3 kilonewtons now. So I don't know how they come up with that figure, but that's not even remotely realistic. All right, that's the end of that. That's just fake. So I'm not going to accept that number. So yeah, we will invalidate that result because it's just not even humanly possible. So yeah, pretty disappointed with this just in terms of how it performs here. Coolant temp 103 degrees, fuel economy that is completely inaccurate, a lane departure system that keeps trying to pull the car out of its lane. It's just really not designed very well for this kind of driving. You would have to switch all of that stuff off before you left anywhere because it is highly distracting, which is the last thing you need when you're towing.
Now onto some acceleration testing and braking testing. I've been keen to drive this one, the Jack T9. This is under 50 grand, so it's a lot of value for money. So I'll be curious to see whether it will actually tow this load as effortlessly as some of the other competitors around this price bracket. So it doesn't have a huge amount of power or torque. So 2 litre 4-cylinder turbocharged diesel, 125 kilowatts of power, just over 400 newton meters of torque, so really not much, and it still weighs over 2 tons. So the power to weight figure on that really isn't very impressive at all. And already I'm feeling it. It is struggling here, so I'm sort of buried in that. So this has a reduced towing capacity as a result of a sum of its parts. So 3,200 kilos instead of 3,500, which is sort of fairly typical for the rest of the segment. They are working on a plug-in hybrid version of this called the Hunter, which will be coming out soon. It's got some pretty crazy specs, and they've done some ride and handling tuning here at the Proving Ground as well. So
I'm looking forward to having a proper drive of that as well, just to see if it's the step forward from this, because you know, this for what it's worth, I think is okay. We've got the trailer mode on now and it's disabled a lot of the annoying beeps and stuff, but when you drive this, it is constantly beeping at you, trying to keep you in a lane. It's highly frustrating, and it's just another one of these cars that needs a much better tuned ADAS system, because it just constantly does your head in. Okay, coming out of the gully, let's see what it's like through here. Oh, wow, okay, come on. Yeah, so two-wheel drive, high range, no 4A mode available here. Yeah, you really have to work it to get it moving. Surprisingly though, the ride feels more settled with this weight in it, because the ride when it's unladen isn't very good. Whereas here with some mass in it, it actually feels a bit more settled. And that was pretty much the story with the previous generation HiLux before they did the Comfort Tune. The Comfort Tune is now fixed HiLux, but the previous generation was just really firm unless you had weight in it. And this is kind of the same with around that 300 kilo mark on the toe ball there. It actually does feel fairly nice and settled. So here comes the real test, climbing up our 15.5% grade. Bury the throttle, wait for it to change gears. It's leisurely. Okay, there's 30. You know what, it's actually pulling up here not too badly. There's 40, no, 38. Let's drop back down. Oh, it's 39 is basically where it's just going to hold us there. Yeah, it's struggling to get up here. It's labouring, and I can't go any harder on the throttle. It's only just making it up here. So yeah, I'm glad it has a reduced towing capacity, because I would not be comfortable towing more than, I probably wouldn't be comfortable towing more than 3,000 kilos with this, but 3,200 kilo limited I think is very appropriate for this size of vehicle. It actually goes to say for a lot of vehicles in this segment, even though it says they can tow 3,500, it doesn't mean you should, because some of these vehicles, especially the 4-cylinder ones, just do not have what it takes to keep a sustained sort of acceleration or momentum when you're towing that much weight. So just because it says it can on the paper, don't necessarily assume that it will, because you know, like this, I'm having to really work it to stay moving. Okay, let's see what engine braking is like. So you've got no paddle shifters. Third gear, 60, just between 60 and 70 k's an hour. Yeah, it's holding it nicely there in terms of engine braking. Yeah, the ride is a little bumpy and choppy over this sort of slightly imperfect road here. So yeah, look, it's not amazing, sort of slightly better than I thought it would be given what it's like on a normal road, but yeah, just still not where it needs to be in this segment for towing this kind of load. I spoke too soon about the beeping. Telling me to focus on driving, even though I'm looking straight ahead out the window. Okay, we're going to have a sort of choppy section down here, and on the lead up to it, yeah, this is feeling quite busy and unrefined through there. So we'll see what it's like through here. That's the first couple of bounces, and then these ones. Yeah, I think it's just that sort of the busyness on the ride that is just a little bit unpleasant. I'm noticing as well that there's something knocking under the floor here too. When you hit some of those bumps, you can kind of feel something under the floor. So I don't know what's going on there, whether there's something loose under the car, but yeah. Look, an okay performance. I guess if you wanted to save money, oh my God, but beeping is actually getting quite annoying now. Yeah, if you wanted to save money, sure, you could go buy one of these, but I just think there's better options out there for this price if you do want to be towing. Musso. Now this is a bit of a quiet achiever, because you know, we've had Mussos and Rextons in a lot of these tests before, and typically they just tend to do well. They're inexpensive, yes, they don't have all the latest gizmos and gadgets and all that sort of stuff, but you are getting a sort of quality vehicle that is fairly reliable as well. So here we're talking about 2.2 litre 4-cylinder diesel. This one is part-time four-wheel drive, which means it's two-wheel drive, high range most of the time. 420 newton meters of torque, so not a huge amount, but it's also not massively heavy either at 2,100 kilos. So it's probably going to struggle a little bit here, but it's a bit of a compromise that you make. It still has 3,500 kilos towing capacity, but let's see how good it is at actually towing when you do have a fairly big load on the back. So we'll set that, and that's all good to go. All right, so it's 50, 60, 70. It's actually pulling along really strongly. 80, 90, so we've broken 90. It's struggling from here. 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96. 97, and that is about as far as it'll go. Okay, we'll reset fuel economy and do our lap. Okay, so this still has the same issue that we had last time. If you look at the revs there and our speed, the speed is gradually dropping, but it's not going down a gear to actually keep momentum going. So we're getting down to like 70 k's an hour. If you were towing right now, you'd have your foot buried to the board, and for whatever reason it's not changing down a gear here when cruise control is active to actually keep up momentum. Finally it's dropped down there at 70 k's an hour, and then here it goes accelerating again. And the experience that we had last time is it'll get up to the speed it can get up to, it will then go up a gear, and then it starts slowing down again. So let's see if it does that. Okay. So there it is there. Let's grab the next gear and back down we go again. Yeah, they definitely need to be tuning that a whole lot better, because that is not a good way to be operating the vehicle. So average economy of 28 litres per 100 k's, but obviously, you know, it's not really a proper figure because half the time it's doing well under the actual speed limit that you set it to. Now I'll be quiet so you can hear what this sounds like accelerating across the quarter mile, and also how quickly it stops from 100 k's an hour. Having rebranded from SsangYong to KGM, while the sort of name is different, the car itself is very similar. So you've got just a two-wheel drive high range system, so it's pretty basic in that regard. But you know, from a pricing point of view, a little over $50,000 drive away, you're getting a nice looking sort of interior and just decent ride as well. It's a bit of a dark horse, this one, quiet achiever. So see what it's like here with this kind of weight on it, because it'll do 3,500 kilos. So if it can't really do this, I don't know why you'd want 3,500 on it. So we'll see what happens. Oh, gee, the ride is just a bit, yeah, it's a bit firm here with this weight on it. It's sort of bouncing around a bit, and yeah, it's just very busy. A bit like that Tasman. It's just super busy and always moving around. It's going to get quite annoying if you're doing a longer road trip. You're just going to be feeling this the entire time. Okay, coming out of our gully here. See how this goes. Give that a kick. Well, it's getting along okay. Got a reasonably good payload as well, almost 900 kilos. And a fair bit of room in the back there as well, due to the wheelbase. All right. Yeah, look, it's not too bad. Once it's moving, it's all right, and the gearbox seems to be active enough here. You know, the only downside is what you notice there with the trailer dying, where it just kept dropping speed instead of dropping back through gears. So it's a cruise control calibration problem, but here, while you're driving it and manually sort of moving the accelerator, it is willing enough to move back through the gears as required. Okay, let's see how she goes here. Flat to the board. 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 37, 38. 39, will we hit 40 k's an hour? Don't think so. No. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it is having to work very hard to get up there, and look, 420 Newton meters, you just want a little bit more out of this. And hopefully now that that sort of restructure is done with the company, they can kind of work on just getting a bit more oomph out of this engine, because the engine itself is really refined. It's made it to a nice gearbox as well. It just needs that little bit more oomph, and while they're doing that, they can work on the suspension, because yeah, it's fairly unpleasant with just how busy it is constantly with that weight on the back. Okay, engine braking, so you slide this over, there's no paddle shifters, and then you've got these little sort of knobby things on the gear stick. It's third at 70, but I'm having to brake because it's running away from us. Can't go down. Let's see what speed I've got to slow down to. Okay, so you've got to be at about 65 for it to give you second gear. Yeah, once you're in second gear, it's actually doing a pretty reasonable job there with the engine braking. And then our bouncies. Oh, can't wait for this to be over. It is so tiring. My goodness, all right. Oh, man. Like if you had kids in the car while you were doing this, they'd be car sick in no time. Yeah, I don't know. I just wonder sometimes with these car companies, did they ever put a trailer on the back and try doing just some driving down a typical country road? Because if you did, you'd be reworking that suspension so it just doesn't feel as labouring as this does. So anyway, there it is, the KGM Musso. Sorry to interrupt the video. If you are planning on hitting the road and towing a bigger load, it is worth remembering that every single kilo you add to your vehicle in terms of accessories is going to get you ever so close to exceeding the GWM limits. Utemaster builds with 50/52 grade aluminium backed by a bracing system they call Strong Bones. It distributes weight into the factory mounting points of the tub, so you get high strength to weight ratio without burning GWM on the canopy itself. Every new ute gets 3D scanned, then the products are designed specifically around that exact model. So instead of universal fit gear that sort of works on everything, you get accessories that actually integrate properly with your ute. And when you're towing, that matters. Weight distribution, usability, aerodynamics, accessibility, all those little details make a difference when you're spending hours behind the wheel. Now, if you do want more information, you can head to the Utemaster website or scan the QR code on the screen. How good does that look? Okay, Kia Tasman. So this is a new entrant since we did this test last. So we'll be getting brand new figures here to see how it all goes. You know, we didn't have much luck last time we tested this. There were faults with the trailer brake controller, and then it was doing weird stuff with the stability control. They claim to have fixed all of that, which is good. So I guess we'll see how it goes and see what happens. So let's get this all set up and see if we can crack 100 k's an hour. Okay, that is in tow mode. We've got it in 4A. Trailer is set. All right, here we go. Do all the checklists. So 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 97, 98, 97, 97, yep, that's it, won't break 100 k's an hour. Now onto some acceleration testing and a brake test. Kia Tasman, when we shot the drag race of all these dual cab utes, the Tasman was a surprise because on paper, it really shouldn't be all that fast. It's got well under 500 newton meters of torque. It's not overly light. Like, it should not have been good, but it was actually explosively quick. And that's why I think that here, with towing it, may be a bit of a surprise package. We did do a towing test with this a little while back, and we had all sorts of issues with stability control continuously intervening, which should never happen when you're towing. So let's see whether they've fixed that now. We also had issues with the trailer connection just not working, so the electrics that run, the flashing lights and all that sort of stuff, that appears to be fixed as well because the indicator's working fine here. I've got it in tow mode, which just holds gears for longer and makes it more willing to shift down when it needs to and to shift up for some engine braking as well. I like the fact that this has an integrated brake controller, which is really good to see, so sort of copy of that Ford Ranger design. And one of the other things that we also realised when we did our towing test is that the ride wasn't very good, so I can feel it right now that it is quite sort of firm and really sort of jittery, and this is almost a dead smooth road. So we did notice that it kept hitting its bump stops on the choppier sections of road. So you know, I don't know that you can really overhaul or change suspension all that quickly, but they have, by the look of it, changed the electronics here to stop the stability control intervention. So coming out of the gully here, I'll just nail that. There we go, that's pulling away really nicely. No dramas there at all. I also like the fact that you can drive this in four-wheel drive auto on sealed surfaces. I don't like all the beeping. It's saying check driver assistance system. So something has failed there. It's just come up there. It's got a little warning sign down here as well. So I don't know what's failed. There's no sort of indication of what I need to be checking, but that warning is still there. So we'll truck on and we'll see what happens. Are you looking to buy a Kia Tasman? Well, they're not selling in great numbers. Bad news for Kia, but good news for you, because so if you scan the QR code on the screen, you'll be able to get put in touch with one of our Brisbane call centre team. We get national fleet pricing through a number of car brands and also really good deals through a number of dealers. And hopefully we can get you a good deal as well on a Tasman. And you only need to deal with the actual car dealer when you go pick up the car. So scan the QR code on the screen if you're in the market for a Tasman. We'll see if we can fix you up with a good deal. Now, hill time. Let's see how it goes up here. We'll nail the throttle. All right, that is into the board, and it's not going super fast, but it is actually picking up pace. Look at that. Like I said, just based on the outputs of this engine, this should not be doing as well as it is. And it makes me feel or think that there's a good potential here that they have derated this on paper, and it is actually a little perkier than what the numbers actually suggest it is. So yeah, really good drivetrain for this kind of thing. So even though we've got a driver assistance failure warning, it is still beeping at us about some stuff like the speed limit, which it hasn't picked up the sign on. Yeah, this ride is really becoming tiresome. It's just so jittery and just constantly busy, and this would get very frustrating if you were doing and this is a fairly smooth road as well. This isn't even that bad. So you can just imagine if you were on a choppier stretch of road towing, you'd be really getting sick of all the vibrations constantly through the cabin. Yeah, definitely needs some work. Okay, going down our long descent here. We'll see what the engine braking's like. There we go, holding 77. Nice. Paddle shifters as well, which is good. Okay, bouncy section. Let's see what it's like through here. Oh, that is so wallowy. Oh man, that is not very good at all. Yeah, I think surprise package is the engine. That's great, but yeah, the suspension definitely needs some work when towing. I'd be just going and getting aftermarket suspension if you're going to be doing a lot of towing with this, because the rest of it feels good. And if you turn off all the safety systems, the rest of it feels good. It's just from a suspension point of view, it's really sort of bouncy when you don't want it to be bouncy, and just really busy when you want it to be smooth. So yeah, definitely some work to be done. A new entrant to the segment. Well, this engine is new to the segment. BT50's been around for a little while. This shares its platform with the Isuzu D-Max, but this 2.2 litre is kind of an alternative to people that don't want to fork out for a 3 litre. And this is what appears to be a mine spec vehicle, so targeting fleets and trades that need that sort of stuff. So 400 Newton meters of torque, 120 kilowatts of power, so not a huge amount, but it still does have a 3,500 kilo brake towing capacity. This is one of the other utes here with just 2-wheel drive, high range. It's a part-time 4-wheel drive, so a little bit of a disadvantage if it's wet, because it means you don't have that added traction unless you're on an unsealed surface and you can run it in 4-wheel drive high range, but we'll see how it goes anyway. So pop this load on. All right, here we go. Oh, it's already feeling like it's struggling. There's 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, yes, it feels very slow. 87, 89, 90, 93, 94, 96, 97. Nah, not getting any faster than 97. All right, let's reset for fuel economy. Now let's do a performance run and a braking test. So this is going to be an interesting experiment, because the BT50 that we're in here is a 2.2 litre. It's only got 400 Newton meters of torque, but it weighs less than 2,000 kilos. So, you know, in theory, this spec, well, actually it weighs less than 2,000 kilos before they add stuff to it, and this spec has a few accessories fitted because they were demonstrating like an emergency response or a mine spec vehicle. So it does have the same 3,500 kilo towing capacity as the 3 litre. So we'll see whether it feels confident around here. So far it's okay. Oh, until I get to this hill. Yeah, I've got it flat to the board there, and it's sort of only just crawling up here. The ride is also significantly firmer than that other BT50 as well. Okay, coming into our hairpin, we'll see what it's like out of the gully here. So just like the BT50 and the D-Max, no four-wheel drive auto mode, just rear-wheel drive and part-time four-wheel drive. Yeah, not gonna lie, this feels very underdone for towing this kind of weight. And this is why a lot of brands are moving towards some form of electrification, because it gets you a get-out-of-jail-free card. If you look at a lot of the Chinese market cars, they're working with a 1.5 litre or 2 litre engine, but it's bolstered by a big battery pack that is going to fill torque gaps like this, where the car's really struggling to go. They fill it with energy from the battery driving an electric motor, and it just gives you a bit of reprieve, and it lets the engine then do the gap filling. This is very old school technology in the grand scheme of things compared to where the rest of the world is moving to. Okay, time for a big climb. This is probably the only vehicle here that's going to struggle, just given the torque output. So that's in the floorboard now. Let's see how we go. There's 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. You know what? It's actually... the digits are moving. We've grabbed the next gear. 39, 40. This is surprising. Look at that. 42, 43. This is doing a better job than some of the other vehicles here in terms of this engine's capacity. Look at that. Made it to the top. I'm pretty impressed with that. I did not expect the 2.2 to be able to really achieve that. Just given that torque output, I think it's one of the key things here why you should never judge a car based on what is on the piece of paper, because sometimes it can be completely wrong. So yeah, that's impressive. Hey, do you run a fleet and you need dual cab utes? We can get really good prices on Mazda BT50s at the moment. We can take care of ordering multiples like this spec here if you need them for your business. So if you do want a car like this, scan the QR code on the screen. That'll put you in touch with one of our Brisbane-based staff in the marketplace team, and we'll be able to see what kind of price we can get you. Can't make any promises, but you never know. We've saved people many thousands of dollars, and we just kind of take the whole pain out of the process of buying a car. So scan the QR code on the screen and let me know how you go. Now engine braking, what's it like? There's fourth, third at 75, giving us some really nice engine braking there as well. So good gearing for this engine. It's doing a good job at just giving us a bit of reprieve on this downhill stretch. I think this is probably obvious to a lot of people who have towed before, but you don't want to be riding your brakes because you're going to cook your car's brakes. And with this, you've got a brake controller that is doing electric braking on the actual trailer itself. You can cook all of that and then you're in big strife. So you want to be doing as much engine braking as you can, just to then have the brakes available when you really need them. And now the choppy section, yeah, it's feeling just a little rough on the way in here. See how it goes over a few of these bumps. It's got a lot of bounce to it at the front end. So I think if you're going to be seriously using this to tow a lot and to really load it up, you're going to want to have a look at an aftermarket suspension option anyway. But I was a little bit surprised by this. I didn't think it would perform as well as it has. So hats off to them for actually making a 2.2 litre work here. This is going to be interesting because this Boss Edition is kind of based on a base spec. So it is fairly light, so it should mean that it should be able to pick up and move sort of fairly quickly. So I'll be curious to see how they compare in terms of their acceleration, and whether you are getting more value out of buying the sort of bigger, meatier version of this with the bigger 3 litre versus the 2.2. So see how we go. Okay, we'll set our load. All right, that is ready to go. Here we go. A little bit of wheel slip off the line. Unfortunately, you can't run this in 4A, one of the few utes left on the market that you can't do that in, and it means that if you are towing a bigger load like this, it's going to struggle a bit. So there's 80 k's an hour, and hit a GPS 90 and it has just hit a wall there. 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97. Ooh, so close. It's not going to get past 97. All right, cool. Let's do our lap and see what the fuel economy's like.
Now I'll be quiet so you can have a listen to the acceleration run and also a break from 100.
D-Max from another mother. This is the BT50 Boss. So it's got Boss insignia on the side. It's like a special edition they've launched. It's got a very plastic steering wheel and looks quite barren in here, especially for the price tag. But anyway, let's see how it goes. In theory, having the 3-litre engine, which is what's fitted to this, it should do better than the other D-Max we were testing because it should be lighter. This just tips the scales at just over 2,000 kilos, payload of just over a tonne with 3.5 tonne brake towing capacity. So it has, you know, the goods to be actually half decent. So coming out of here, it feels sort of kind of similar to the D-Max, but probably just a tiny bit more willing to climb. Ironically, normally the Boss is in the expensive version, not the the poverty pack. So yeah, curious choice on the name, but you know, it is kind of pared back if you don't want all the tech and all the sort of bells and whistles. You got cloth seats, this sort of plastic steering wheel. It's yeah, it's nice enough for what it is. Like the BT50, you've only got 2-wheel drive high range. You can't drive this in 4-wheel drive auto. Coming out of the gully here, actually feels okay. It's it doesn't feel starved of torque. It feels like you can sort of just get up it and it'll start moving. So I think having a little less weight is helping it sort of get along here with a bit more pace. Okay, big hill. Here it goes. Oh yeah, that feels like it's having a work. 40, 41, 42, 43. You know, I think I said in the D-Max video that, you know, it's not sort of mind-blowing performance, but I'm not intimidated by it, and I feel like it will eventually get there, and that it'll survive that test when it does get there. So my patience won't with all the beeping though. Now some engine braking. So third at 70. It's probably just a little bit. That's actually not too bad. It's holding us there 73 in third, so decent for engine braking. Surprisingly, the ride in general has actually been quite decent. It's got some firm edges to it, but it's sort of fairly comfortable. We have our choppy section down here now. Let's see whether it performs any better or worse as we travel over these sine waves. Yeah, look, a little bouncy around the front end, but for the most part, it's been quite comfortable with this load. Yeah, it's actually a half decent. So yeah, I don't know about this spec. It seems a bit expensive for what you're getting, but BT50 in general looks okay in terms of its ability to tow this kind of load.
Okay, so MG U9. This is basically a new entrant to this segment. Shares a platform with the LDV equivalent of this, but interestingly, the MG version has independent rear suspension. And when we drove this, I was pretty impressed with the fact that they can have payload, the fact that they can have decent handling and ride because of the suspension. And you've got versatilities like that tray that drops down, you've got the divider that comes down into the cabin. Really is quite a clever little package. So 2.5 litre 4-cylinder turbocharged diesel, a little over 500 newton meters of torque. So it really does place it quite well in this segment in terms of where it sits. The only downside is that it weighs a lot, so 2.5 tons straight out of the box, and that's before you sort of put anything on it or have the driver in it. So it'll be, you know, it should do okay here, but I don't know if we'll crack 100 k's an hour. So let me set the load, and we will see whether it can meet our 100 k an hour threshold. Okay, I've got it in its tow mode. Well, it enables tow mode automatically, so we'll see what happens now. Here we go. Felt strong out of the box there, so there's 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, it's starting to slow down a bit now, 90, 93, 94, 5, 6, 7, 97, 96. Yeah, all right, that's about it. So we will reset and get our fuel economy. Now let's do some performance testing and braking tests. Okay, the MG U9, this is one that I'm really intrigued by because it's a very different take on other dual cab utes in this segment. Independent rear suspension, which is a big departure from leaf springs, which is typically what you'll find, or a coil sprung rear end. So it kind of has car suspension effectively, but it still has front and rear diff locks. It's got diesel engine that does over 500 newton meters of torque. It does pay the penalty in mass though. Straight out of the box it weighs over 2.5 tons. It reduces the payload effectively by only giving you about 700 or 800 kilos to play with. But you do get a 3.5 ton brake towing capacity and a constant four-wheel drive system, which means that you can rely on this when the weather gets a little worse for wear. So got it in tow mode at the moment. You know, so far it's actually doing a good job. The suspension feels good, the ride's nice. You don't have an integrated brake controller, unfortunately, so you've got to get an aftermarket one fitted. But what I find with these Chinese brands is whenever they get feedback from Western markets, they tend to implement stuff pretty quickly. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing integrated brake controllers pretty soon. Okay, so this will be the real test. Yes, it has 520 newton meters of torque, but it is on the heavier side. So let's see how it goes out of our gully here. Get on the throttle. Yeah, it's actually not terrible. Like, it's not sort of pulling my face off, but it's definitely not disgracing itself. It's moving along nicely. Steering actually has decent feel to it as well. The front does feel a little light over some of these bumps and quite soft too. So we'll see what it's like at the end of our test here where we really get the bounce on, just to see how it performs there. But yeah, so far it's feeling pretty good. Okay, our 15% grade, annoying beeps there about distraction. All right, flat to the board. Oh, that's not good. It's not changing down gears there. That's really not good. 29 kilometers an hour. I'm like inside the firewall right now, 30 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, that's very poorly done. That should be, and it's telling me I'm distracted, yes, because I'm trying to get up this enormous hill. Yeah, that's not great. So it really should have changed to second. I'll see if I can access. That's a weird thing. If I go manual, I can access second, and then we're accelerating. So I think they probably need to do a bit of work there on that gearbox calibration when this is in, literally, its tow mode. Oh man, the beeping from all these driver monitoring things is very frustrating. A lot of this stuff should just switch off when you're towing, like it has switched off lane support systems and stuff, but everything else here is very annoying. Unfortunately, you've got the government to thank for that. They mandate all of this nonsense so that you can get a 5-star safety rating, and I'm yet to find a system that has all of this that actually works well. So yeah, policy for the sake of policy. Let's see what the engine braking is like here. Yeah, so shifting conditions not met, won't let me go any lower than 5th gear. Yeah, they definitely need to do some tuning here with these ratios, because we have more than enough travel left in that gear, but it's just not letting me gear down enough. I've got to ride the brakes here to keep it slow. So yeah, I think they definitely need to do some work on the gearbox tune when it is in this tow mode. All right, let's see what it's like over this bouncier section through here. Oh yeah, that front end definitely needs just a bit more. This distraction monitor is very distracting, ironically. Yeah, the front end just needs slightly more firmness to that suspension. It is just a bit too soft, and it's just sort of bouncing around a lot. So yeah, but overall, I mean, you look at the price you're paying here for this. What is it? 60 grand for this this spec here with all the sort of bells and whistles. That is cheap for what you're getting. 3.5 ton towing capacity. Doesn't get you much in a Ford Ranger these days. The Nissan Navara, but not as you know it. This is the new kid on the block, but kind of the old kid on the block, because it is a dressed up Mitsubishi Triton, which means 2.4 litre twin turbo diesel, 470 newton meters of torque. Wasn't blown away by the Triton, and this is kind of much the same. It's got all the same issues with the driver monitoring system being annoying. Anyway, let's see how it goes. We've got to do 4-wheel drive high range for sealed surfaces. That is one of its benefits, that it can drive in 4-wheel drive auto on sealed surfaces, which a lot of the competitors can't do. You've got a 3.5 ton brake towing capacity, but we'll see if it's got the guts here to sort of get up and move and get us up to 100. So alrighty, it's 30, 50, 60, 70. It's actually got pretty strong mid-range. There's the driver monitoring stuff. There's 90. It's actually sort of surprisingly punchy there up to 90. There's 97, 98, 97. There you go, not too bad. All right, we'll reset. Didn't get to 100, but reset and do our fuel economy laps. Now onto some acceleration testing and a brake test. Now, I did say that we don't have a Triton in this test, but we technically do. This is a Mitsubishi Triton underneath that they've put Nissan badges on. They have tried to differentiate this by doing a local suspension tune, and the crazy thing is they actually fit that suspension here in Australia. So when the car comes in off the boat, they ditch the Nissan suspension and then put this Australian tuned suspension on, which I just think is a bizarre exercise and increases the cost of the car, which didn't need increasing given the influx of Chinese competitors that are significantly better value for money. So anyway, let's see how it performs. So 2.4 litre, get stuck into that, 2.4 litre twin turbo diesel, 470 newton meters of torque, something we're going to spec sheet here, just under 2.2 tonnes. So not a huge amount of power and torque given the mass of the vehicle. And you can certainly feel that in our little climb just there. I had to really sort of get committed into it. So we'll see what it's like out of the gully down the bottom here. But yeah, it just feels a little bit under given that it has a 3.5 tonne brake towing capacity. Okay, here we go. So the good thing here is you can lock it into four-wheel drive auto on sealed surfaces. So it gives you that little bit of extra traction. Coming out of here, it doesn't feel too bad. Being a twin turbo setup, you've got better reach across the torque band there for response. So it means that you're not sitting there waiting for it to come on boost forever. You do have various stages of boost that it can access. And you've got limits to that, but you know, it is sort of moving along okay. We'll see how that feels once we get to our hill there, but yeah, so far so good. And look, that suspension work, yeah, I know it's a bit silly to be doing all that in Australia and wasting however much money it costs to do that, but it does make a big difference. This car actually rides really nicely, and you can tell that they've actually done some tuning here for both on-road driving and towing like this, because it's far more compliant than something like a Kia Tasman, which is kind of all over the place, whereas this actually feels pretty decent. Time for the big hill. Let's see how willing it is to get up here. So flat to the board. All right. See if I can bring a speedo up there. Yeah, it's kind of reached a peak of 42 kilometers an hour at 3,000 RPM, but it is holding that. And we're not sort of going any slower. Once we reach the top here, that'll sort of pick up a bit more. I can feel it's killed the air conditioning to scavenge as much power as it can. Yeah, look, I think ultimately this feels about, 40 or 50 newton meters down on where it should be, because, once you plummet through a four-wheel drive auto system, you lose, you have efficiency losses through the drivetrain. So yes, you can drive it in two-wheel drive high range to get just a bit more pep out of it, but then you lose the whole benefit of having four-wheel drive auto, and that's where something like a V6 diesel comes in handy. When you think about it, brands like GWM are working on a 3-litre diesel to respond to what everyone else is doing in this market for the Tank 500 and the Cannon Alpha. The Chinese brands are just responding much quicker than the Japanese brands when it comes to this. You would have thought that given this is based on a Triton and all of the complaints people had about the Triton when it launched, you would have rectified all of that by the time this came around, given it is effectively a clone. To think that it still has a lot of the same problems. Yes, they fixed the suspension, which is great, but it still has an annoying driver monitoring system and safety aids that are very hard to switch off. And it's stuff like that drivers find really frustrating that they should have spent a bit of time on. So, yeah. All right, let's see what the engine braking is like. No paddle shifters. Yeah, so there's third at 68. Seems to be holding okay there. Yeah, probably one of the worst features of this car is the stop-start system. It is so unsophisticated. It is like one of the earlier stop-start systems in terms of how effective it is. It just brings the car to a shuddering halt. takes forever to restart. It is just a very poorly implemented feature compared to something like that on the HiLux with a 48-volt mild hybrid system that is virtually instant, and they've done a really good job with that integration, whereas this is very frustrating and is one of those features that you would switch off immediately along with the driver monitoring system each time you drove it. Okay, here's the choppy stuff. Let's see how it fares through here. Yeah, look, it is a tiny bit bouncy, but it's very controlled and very comfortable. That's the important thing. Where the Tasman was super busy over that, this is super comfortable and just very relaxing. So, yeah, look, it's a bit of a mixed bag. There's some stuff this does really well, and then other stuff that it just sucks at, unfortunately. Time for some heavy haulage with the Ram 1500 Rebel. This is the new Hurricane, which is 6-cylinder instead of V8. A little bit controversial, but you know, based on our testing, we've actually done a drag race with these particular specs. You can click up there to watch that. These are so much faster than the V8. They don't sound as good, but yeah, they absolutely haul. So I don't think this will have any issues at all hitting 100 km an hour with the trailer Dyne. It's in towing mode at the moment. As a reminder, 3-litre twin turbo 6, over 600 newton meters of torque, over 300 kilowatts of power. It is a big beast though, a little over 2.6 tons. So a lot of weight to be moving around, but I've got it in full drive auto mode here, so we should have no issues with traction at all. 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. No dramas at all. All right, let's reset this fuel economy. Now let's go 0 to 100 and also a stop from 100 to 0. You know, look, the V8 was a fantastic engine, sounded so good. This just wipes the floor with it in terms of acceleration and performance. Over 600 newton meters of torque, over 300 kilowatts of power. So all really good combinations for the type of thing you'd expect to be doing with this vehicle, which is towing. And this is the Rebel version, which is slightly more geared towards off-road driving. Interestingly though, when it's off boost, it just doesn't have the depth of acceleration that you're going to find in something like that Chevy with the V8, because once it's off boost, it's basically a lower capacity 6-cylinder engine, so you've got less volume to work with there, whereas once it's on boost, it is absolutely singing. Okay, let's give it a kick out of this gully. Oh yeah. Oh, that is so effortless. Once it comes on boost, it is absolutely moving with no problems at all. You do get a decent amount of payload, around 900 kilos, which is good. A lot of the American pickup trucks are slightly limited in terms of payload. So it sort of rounds it out nicely as a load hauling package. Okay, hill climb. I think this is going to be entirely effortless. So I'm just going to bury the beans, bury the foot. I don't know what bury the beans means. Look at that. It is hauling. Very nice. Very nice. Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, what a great little package for this engine and this much load. It is just the perfect combo. Now, in terms of the ride, it's trucking along very nicely. It's quite comfortable. Steering feels lighter than the Silverado, not by much though with the load on it, but still feels a little easier to manoeuvre at lower speeds. So on engine braking, you've got these buttons here on the steering wheel that allow you to rifle back through the gears. So there's third for engine braking at 80 k's an hour. It's doing an okay job of holding the load. I could do with a touch more engine braking there because I can't get back to second. I'm going to have to come in with the brake here. It does look like it'll pre-select though, so I've told it to go down to second. Oh, nice. So when it has second available, it then selects that for you, which is good. I think the engine braking really doesn't feel overly strong, which is interesting. I think they could do just a little bit more there with compression to pull it up a touch. And then our bumpies down here, let's see what this is like between 60 and 70. Yeah, that's beautifully composed through there. Fantastic, nice one. So yeah, good all-rounder here, the Ram 1500. Okay, LandCruiser 70 series. This is the 4-cylinder version. Automatic now available with a manual as well for those people who didn't want the auto. This is a good engine. It doesn't have the 48-volt mild hybrid stuff you find on HiLux, but I think that's a deliberate thing. They try and keep it tried and tested. You know, this engine's been around for a while. It's now in 70 series. It'll probably keep going for a long time yet. So let's see how this performs. This is kind of a competitor to the Super Duty. If you go and do all your aftermarket upgrades, that is what Ford was trying to target with the Super Duty. So as a base layer for that vehicle, you know, this is where you start before you do all your modifications. So we're actually going to do a comparison between Super Duty and this. If it's live already, you can click up there to watch that. When it does go live, if it's not live already, we'll stick a link in the description below. So we'll set this load, 500 Newton meters of torque we've got available to us. So will it be enough to get through 100 k's an hour? I've got it in haul mode. Let's see how we go. Okay, here we go. A wheel slip off the line. It's 50, 60, 70, 80. Starting to slow down. 88, 90, 94, 95, 96, 97, 97. I can feel it's already backed off. Yep, 97, good as it gets. Now on to the 0 to 100 and braking tests. Welcome to 1996. That is what it feels like. But I think a lot of people still have respect for 70 series LandCruiser. Yes, the V8 might be, on its last legs, and they've put, sacrilege of 4-cylinder diesel in here. But as we've discovered, 500 Newton meters. It is just, it's an engine that gets the job done. And here with a mass of just over 2,100 kilos, you've got 3,500 towing capacity. A lot of people will buy these to do GWM upgrades and track corrections because bizarrely the front and rear tracks aren't the same width. But ultimately, at the heart of it, these are vehicles that last a long time. They hold their resale value incredibly well. There's very little reason to look beyond this if you need a tool of the trade that has one job and does that one job well. So let's see how it performs and whether it's still up to the task of towing this much weight. So I've got it in haul mode. That just gives you sharper throttle response, makes it feel a little perkier. With all these tow and haul modes and stuff like that, while throttle response does feel sharper, ultimately if you go full throttle, it's not going to give you any more power than any other drive mode. It just makes it feel a little more responsive between that initial throttle input and when you get to full throttle. Okay, let's see how it comes out of this gully. So this is a two-wheel drive, part-time four-wheel drive setup. So it means you can't drive it in four-wheel drive on sealed surfaces. Look at that, it is just monstering out of here. Just shows you a four-cylinder diesel isn't necessarily such a bad thing. You've seen there with the Super Duty, for them to get the capacity they need, it needs to weigh an extra, 500 kilos more than this before you add accessories. So yes, it may have a V6 diesel, but it's only got 100 newton meters more torque, but significantly more weight. So here on the other hand, you've got less torque, but you've also got less weight, and as a result of that, it just feels a whole lot perkier. Will it survive our hill climb? Let's have a look. All right, roll into this, full throttle. Oh yeah, not a problem. Oh, mind you, it's having to dig deep there. Yeah, once it drops underneath 2,500 RPM, but now that it's on boost, it's pulling away nice. I can feel the air conditioning's pulled back a bit, but look at this. It is so effortless. Yeah, and this is genuinely what decades of just mastering the same old thing does for you. If you're not committed to having to do these big product revisions, new designs, new engines every sort of 4 or 5 years or 10 years or whatever, you can get away with this because all of these components here have really been tested over time. You know that door handle will survive, so you keep buying them, you keep making them. These doors work, you just keep making them. You don't have to go make new things. As long as it's safe and it's got the safety features it needs, which it does in this day and age, it is a tool that just gets the job done. Now on the ride front, it is a little bit choppy, but these feel great once they've got some weight in them. When you consider that this has a payload of, what do we got here, 1,380 kilos. It has to have some pretty rigid suspension, but when you put that sort of 300 kilo mark on the tow ball, it's sort of weighing that rear down nicely. Put a bit of payload in it as well, and it just feels nice and settled compared to when it's empty. Now engine braking, no paddle shifters, obviously. So that's third at about 70 k's an hour, giving us a reasonably good amount of engine braking there. Let's see where second is. Second is at about 60, there you go. Second is really good for engine braking, so yeah, very nice. And now the bumpy stuff. All right. Yeah, that's really good. Very nice and planted and settled. Yeah, it's hard to complain. These things are outrageously expensive and arguably very overpriced, but you're paying extra for getting a car that isn't going to let you down. It's going to be able to tow with ease. It is what it is. It's a 70 series, so yeah, nice one, Toyota. Okay, Amarok time as the weather sets in. So this shares a V6 diesel with the Ranger. The Ranger just cracked 100 k's an hour. This should, in theory, do the same sort of thing. Okay, so I'm going to put this into tow/haul mode. That's all set up. We've got our logger running, got that set to 3 kilonewtons. Give this a shot. Love the V6 diesel in these just because it has that punch that you need to get up and move, even for overtaking and stuff like that when you've got a trailer on. So there's 97, 98. No luck on hitting 100. That's interesting.
just hit 100 in the Ranger, but this only got to 98. So, all right, we'll set the cruise control and we will do a lap of the bowl here with the load on to see the fuel economy. Now let's see how quickly these accelerate over the quarter mile and also how quickly they stop from 100 k's an hour. One of the things I like about the Amarok and Ranger is just the integration of all the four-wheel drive controls. Like the fact that you've got an integrated brake controller, you've got a trailer mode, you've got this automatic reverse parking with the trailer as well. And if you do want to see a video we shot on that, you can click up there. But it's tech like this that makes this accessible for the average person. You know, not everyone is amazing at parking, and yes, I agree that everyone should be doing a caravanning course where they learn how to park properly, but you know, it comes handy in times when you're in a bit of a bind and you need some assistance parking, or you don't have a helper there with you. The fact that you can integrate an additional camera within the camera system as well, I just think stuff like that is a handy thing to have. So how does this feel straight out of the box there with the V6 diesel? You wouldn't want to be in the 4-cylinder, let's just say that much. The V6 is good, 600 Newton meters, but at just under 2.4 tons in mass, it is already pushing a fair bit of weight around before you stick the trailer on. So yes, while it is handy to have that big V6 diesel, it is still a heavy car to be sort of moving around. And the ride as well just feels a little bit firm here through this first section. We'll see what it's like when we get to the choppier stuff. But that could be partly due to the all-terrains that are fitted to this as well. So I've got it in tow mode. It's sort of doing a good job here in terms of braking and giving us the confidence we need behind the wheel to have the right gear running with a 10-speed auto. It's sort of just shuffling through the gears and getting us access to everything that we need. All right, so out of our hairpin here, on the throttle. Nice. Yeah, it feels really good out of here. The steering feels a little light at the front there. We have, done the proper weights here. You know what's interesting? I have noticed there it's jumping in and out of this tow haul mode. I don't know if it's a dodgy connector or something funny's going on there. Yeah, it seems to be working okay, but it's I just noticed it switched to normal mode out of tow haul mode, so keep an eye on that. Yeah, so what I started saying before is that the front end feels a little bit light when you're on the throttle. I've got it in 4A there, but it kind of just gives you an indication that it does feel a bit sort of tail heavy and unloaded at the front. But yeah, we have done the weights on the trailer properly so that we have around 10% of our load on the ball, which is the recommended amount. Okay, big hill time. Let's see how we go. Kangaroo off to the side there. Yeah, this is confidently climbing 50 k's an hour. We're adding to that as we go. Yeah, very good. Very good. All right. Yeah, I'll be curious to see what it's like with some of our 4-cylinder utes, because this is working with a V6 diesel. So you just imagine with 2 less cylinders, you're really going to be working then. Okay, time for a long descent. So you've got no paddle shifters. This is kind of where I want to have a look at some engine braking and seeing what that's like.
Yeah, the only downside is you've got to use the buttons here off to the side of the gear stick. They can be just a little bit tricky to see while you're driving, but that's where paddle shifters are handier to just be able to manage your engine braking as you're going down big hills like this. But it's holding speed nicely there, and it has a confident amount of engine braking as well. And finally, down through our choppier section here, yeah, it's interesting. The ride does feel quite firm. It's not overly comfortable in here. It's weird. It feels very different to when it's unladen. But yeah, seems to cope okay with these bumps though. It's sort of not too soft at the front end. Sort of follows through quite nicely. So there it is. Amarok, really solid performer. Just a little on the firmer side, but something you can easily fix with aftermarket springs if it becomes too much of an issue. But it has a very confident powertrain here to sort of get everything moving. Okay, BYD Shark. So lowest towing capacity here, 2,500 kilos, but importantly, this thing absolutely hauls. It's got a plug-in hybrid system. Look at the combined numbers here. 650 newton meters of torque, over 300 kilowatts of power. So it's a 1.5 litre petrol engine, and then it has quite a large battery, and then 2 sets of electric motors. So unlike the Cannon Alpha, which has an electric motor in line with the transmission, this actually has an electric motor on each axle, and then the internal combustion engine is effectively generating energy to charge the battery, and then it discharges through those electric motors. So a bit of a unique setup. Unfortunately, the downside is not great off-road, which we discovered when we tested this. And also, when you run out of battery, it can also become problematic because then you're relying on a 1.5 litre petrol engine to run the actual vehicle itself, plus the load that you're carrying. So we'll see how it goes here. We'll set that to auto load, 3 kilonewtons. I reckon this will crack 100 without any dramas at all, given how quick it is. So let's give it a shot. So I've got it in the tow haul mode. That disables some of the sort of ADAS functions. Oh, this is so quick. 70, 80, that is the Chevy, by the way. 90, 100, no dramas at all. Very impressive. All right, we'll reset this and get our fuel economy. Now I'll be quiet so you can hear what this sounds like accelerating across the quarter mile, and also how quickly it stops from 100 k's an hour. We're setting off in the BYD Shark. Worth noting, this has a maximum brake towing capacity of 2,500 kilos, so we've taken 500 kilos out of the trailer. So from being 3,000 kilos and 300 on the downball, it's now 250 on the downball and 2,500 in total. So this is at its maximum capacity. It has switched itself into towing mode. It's going to beep at me constantly because it's got an annoying detection thing I haven't switched off. But I'm going to leave all that stuff running simply because I want to see what these systems are like, in real life here when you're driving normally. What I am noticing very early on here is the ride is super firm. And it's probably one of the things that you're going to find most frustrating is that a firm ride is just going to get busy and annoy you if you have family in the car. The other thing that I'm noticing now as well is that it just doesn't have the level of engine braking that you will find in most of these other diesel dual cab or even petrol dual cab utes. Instead, you're just having to rely on regen and the friction brakes on the trailer and the vehicle itself. Just as a note as well, we did charge this to full before we started doing this testing. So same story with the Cannon Alpha, just to make it fair. So I'll give it a punch out of the gully here. Yeah, nice. It's gradual acceleration. It's gradual acceleration. It doesn't feel as sort of explosive as it does when the trailer's not on here. Oh, there you go. It's actually sort of picking up a little bit there. So I've got it running in our hybrid electric mode at the moment. You can run it in EV mode. So if I switch that to EV mode and just punch it, actually gives you pretty reasonable acceleration. And then in hybrid EV mode, if I punch it, oh yeah, that's not too bad. It sort of, it sort of picks up and moves. It's not sort of anything too crazy, but you know, when this is untethered from the trailer, it really sort of picks up and moves. I have a feeling that they reduce power output in trailer mode just to sort of conserve that energy level. Okay, this is going to be the real test of the plug-in hybrid drivetrain. Our 15.5% grade. We'll line it up and punch it. Let's see how it goes here. All right, here we go. It's flat to the board. That's 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. This is absolutely hauling. Have a look at that. Holy moly, that is quick. Just gradually builds up speed beautifully. So yeah, that is quite impressive. Now you might be wondering as well, what happens when it runs out of battery? Well, when we did our review of the BYD Shark, we actually hooked it up to our trailer Dyne to run the battery empty as an edge case to see what actually happens if you do run the battery empty. Well, 9 times out of 10, it's actually not going to be a problem because the car itself will always keep a reserve energy level in the battery. So when it gets down to its reserve, basically it will then use the engine to charge the battery up. So that reserve is always there to give you that explosive punch that you need because it doesn't want to just rely on that 1.5 litre engine. So if you get below that reserve, it will only ever happen if you're on a steep climb and you're using beyond the engine's available energy capacity from that internal combustion engine. If you have to start eating into the battery, it will then start cutting your power and you're effectively just using the internal combustion engine. And that is a 1.5 litre engine trying to pull a 2,700 kilo car plus your 2,500 kilo trailer on the back. So that is always going to struggle, but the chances of ever hitting that are very slim because you would need to have a sustained energy load on the car for a long duration to get into that reserve, because the second you let off the throttle, it's going to use the internal combustion engine to charge the battery back up again so that you still have that buffer. So that is worth keeping in mind. I have seen a lot of reports of owners having quite high fuel consumption, so that is something else to consider as well. When the battery runs out, you're going to be constantly running that 1.5 litre engine to keep it within its supplemented battery range, and that is going to chew through a fair bit of fuel because it is a small engine to be creating the energy to move this massive vehicle plus its trailer. So we've got our long descent here, so I want to see what engine braking is like. So I've just rolled out of the throttle and it's sort of doing a reasonable job there of holding the speed at 60 k's an hour. Go up a little faster. That is the engine level, braking level we were at with some of the other vehicles. Even there at 70, it's holding that nicely. So shows you that yes, stepped gears would be nice to increase your engine braking load, but even here with the regen levels as they are, it's actually doing a reasonably good job. So I think they've made some tweaks there to that software stack for towing mode to just improve the way that it handles these sort of long descents. And now I've got our bumpy section through here. Let's see what this is like. Yeah, look, the body control is actually fairly composed. It is just firm, that's all. So I'd be looking at an aftermarket suspension kit for this if you were going to be doing any long or arduous amounts of towing, because that's going to make it feel a lot nicer. But yeah, really, really decent job here for the Shark. Even though we're running at 500 kilos less than the other cars, I think this is a commendable effort. Okay, Jeep Gladiator. Love how sort of rugged you feel when you're inside one of these. It's just sort of, yeah, it's a very cool looking car. It's got a cigarette lighter. That is crazy. There you go. Alrighty, now, this has amongst the lowest towing capacities here. I think this is kind of BYD Shark territory, around 2.5 tonne. This is 2.7 or thereabouts. So, you know, it's not made for towing, but we thought we're going to be using it across all of these tests. So let's put it in our towing test as well. Yeah, I think we're good to go. So petrol V6, naturally aspirated. Great sounding engine, just doesn't have a huge amount of torque. If I look at our little sheet here, 347 newton meters. Compare that to something like one of the V6 diesels at 600 newton meters. There's a big difference there in terms of how much punch you're getting when you lay into the throttle. So we'll set this up and we'll see if it'll make 100 k's an hour. Okay, it's all set up. We've got our load. Here we go. And I'm running this in 4 high auto as well. See what I mean? It sounds fantastic. All right, there's 60, 70, 80, 90. Got a second wind. 99, come on. Oh, got so close. It got to literally 99. Almost got there. It had that little bit of torque at the top end of that rev band. So, all right, not quite 100, but very close. Let's reset the fuel economy. Now let's do a performance run and a braking test. Jeep Gladiator time. So we've taken 500 kilos out of the trailer. We just wanted it to match the BYD Shark, which has 2,500 kilo brake towing capacity. This one's at 2,700. So we just thought we'll make them equal. It'll save us having to move weights in and out. So this is an old engine. It's the Pentastar V6, 3.6 litre, naturally aspirated petrol. Wallaby out of the way. You know, it is an old engine, but what it does well is it's really peaky. So when you get up it sings, but when it's singing, it's producing, you know, power. So you really feel like it's being productive. Like right now, if I just sort of bury that, I don't feel like we're getting held back here in terms of our motion. It's actually sort of pulling along quite nicely. So yeah, Gladiator feels good with this kind of weight on it at the moment. The ride's also pretty good too. We're on a meaty set of all-terrains, but the ride is sort of a little busy, but not too soft and not too strong. So it's a nice sort of mix of where you want it to be. So I've got this in 4 high auto. Love the fact that you can drive this in full drive high range on sealed surfaces, especially for things like towing. It's just going to give you that little bit more confidence behind the wheel. All right, give it a kick out of here. There it goes. Have a listen to that. Sounds good, and this is what I mean. It is, despite what it says there on the paper in terms of its power and torque outputs, it actually gets up and moves once it drops back a gear, and it's willing to constantly drop back gears as well to keep everything moving. The steering is fairly devoid of feel, but you know, this is actually doing way better than I thought it would with this kind of load on it. They've tuned it well with this gearbox and engine combination. If you don't mind the noise, it's actually moving along nicely. Righto, this is going to be the real challenge. Let's see what it's like up our hill here. All right, bury that. Okay, there's 40, 50. We'll see what it's like when it grabs this next gear. Yeah, it's just fallen. Oh, it's holding 50 there. Yeah, nice, holding 50 there confidently. And there we are at the top of the hill. Yeah, tell you what, this is pretty good. So $85,000. It is a big that wallaby off. It is a big old chunk of change, but you know, this is a bit of a lifestyle thing. You can take the roof off, and you know, it's doors come off, all that sort of stuff. So you know, it is the type of vehicle that you can buy if you want to, you know, be seen in it. It's big. It's got that look about it, and to see that it can actually tow 2,500 here with relative ease, I think is pretty confidence inspiring. It means you can stick a jet ski on the back, a small caravan, and it's going to get you where you need to go. And the other benefit as well is that when you do get to where you want to go, you've got front rear diff locks, you've got all of the equipment you need here to do some proper off-road driving as well. Now, engine braking. So No paddle shifters, but we'll just whip through the gears here. There's fifth, try third. Yeah, nice third's giving us reasonable engine braking. Yeah, it's doing a decent job there, so yeah, nice. And now the bouncy section down the bottom. Let's see what this is like. So, yeah, tiny bit sort of busy on the approach, and then this is the bouncier part. Yeah, look, it's good. A little bouncy, but definitely not the worst I've driven. So, yeah, there you go, Jeep Gladiator. Who would have thought? I was not expecting this to be as good as it is at towing. This is surprisingly good. Righto, so we are back in the studio. We're going to go over all of the results here. We're going to cover the good, the bad, the ugly, but we're going to start off with the performance numbers, and I'll split this into a couple of sections. We'll do sort of unladen acceleration performance, braking performance, and then we'll move on to the laden stuff with the trailer and the trailer dyne as well. Now, it is worth keeping in mind real world figures. How do these relate to this? These are back-to-back tests. Same day, we basically ran the car unladen, reset the fuel economy around the bowl, log that result, and then attach the trailer, set it to 3 kilonewtons, reset the fuel economy, ran it around the bowl, and then recorded the result. In the real world, you're going to have variances in hills and driving styles and all that sort of stuff, but this is a back-to-back comparison. Purpose of this is to say at the same venue, on the same day, these are the results we achieved, and it'll give you a point of reference there between what the vehicle is like unladen at our facility compared to laden at our facility. So in terms of 0 to 100 times, you can see the results up on the screen there. BYD Shark, unsurprisingly, the quickest of the lot here at just over 5 seconds. Absolute rocket ship of a thing. So it shows you that having that electric punch with an internal combustion engine absolutely helps. Closely followed by the Ram 1500, that turbocharged 6-cylinder is a beast of a thing. And then the next plug-in hybrid, about a second slower than the Shark with the Cannon Alpha plug-in hybrid. Down the other end of the scale, unsurprisingly, the Ranger Super Duty, just over 13 seconds, 0 to 100. That is unladen, that is empty. So you can just imagine how slow this thing is when you actually load it up. And I'll get to that when we talk about the towing section, but yeah, it is just one of the biggest sticking points with this car is the engine just feels so underdone, and that is before you put any load in it, and this is just absolute evidence of that. Now, I can hear you all bashing your keyboards. What happened to the F-150? Good question. So F-150 can run both as a 2-wheel drive high range or 4-wheel drive auto. Previously, when we did straight line testing in F-150, 4-wheel drive auto was the fastest setting. But there is a slight anomaly with the testing we did here. We had to move the testing to the bowl. Now the bowl has a very slight turn in it so that it can achieve its constant radius around the bowl itself. The problem with that appears to be specifically for F-150 that when you input steering torque, it starts torque limiting the drivetrain. And basically the reason for that is you want to make sure that you're sending equal amounts of torque to the front and rear axles, and it must have some torque limiting system there. When you start inputting steering, it for whatever reason doesn't want to give you 100% of torque. So that is sport mode, flat to the board, the same way that we would have done straight line testing, but with a little bit of steering input there to make sure that we sort of went around the bottom of the bowl. It seems to have torque limited that vehicle. So unfortunately we ran all the cars at the same location. This was the only one that had such a big difference there in terms of its acceleration times. Now moving on to braking, this is just as important as accelerating. In fact, it's more important in my opinion. Anything between 35 and 40 meters for a passenger car is pretty reasonable. Anything above 40 is kind of starting to push it a little. This is for a passenger car. For a dual cab ute, anything below 50 is kind of reasonable, given that you're working with a vehicle that has higher center of gravity. You've got different tires, especially all-terrain tires that are going to be poor for stopping. That is why I was really surprised with some of the early vehicles here, or some of the better stopping vehicles. Toyota HiLux, just over 40 meters, like ever so slightly just over 40. That is a cracking result, and it means that this thing is going to pull up almost as quickly as a standard passenger car, which is kind of unheard of in this segment. So hat off to Toyota for sorting that out. Closely followed by the other two Japanese cars, the BT50 Boss and the XS at just over 40 meters as well. Strangely, the Isuzu D-Max took another 3 meters to stop, despite being on the same platform as the BT50. So it does show you that differences there, whether it's in tyre selection or traction controls and the hardware behind the scenes between those two brands influences how quickly these vehicles stop. And then BYD Shark also impressed there with just under 41 metres, again just showing you that it can pull up really effectively. The Kia Tasman, that was on some pretty chunky all-terrain tyres. That only took an extra metre to stop than the HiLux did, so that is an impressive effort. The fact that what you'll find most of the time with chunkier all-terrains is that they require a bigger sort of stopping distance, and most of the reason there is that a tyre has to be designed for a number of different things, but it has to kind of orient itself towards one end of like a spider chart, whether it's off-road performance where you sacrifice stopping distance, or whether it's on-road performance where you sacrifice off-road performance, or whether it's wet handling where you then sacrifice dry handling, or whether it's longevity of the tyre where you then sacrifice wet handling. It is really hard to find a tyre that suits all of those things, but it shows here with the Tasman. It actually does a good job with off-road performance with that all-terrain tyre, but then also on-road performance for stopping as a passenger vehicle. Down the other end of the scale, Ineos Quartermaster. Look, this is kind of unsurprising. This was on a very chunky set of all-terrain tyres with a stopping distance of just over 50 metres. You've got dual live axles there as well. You don't have the suspension geometry that helps settle this vehicle under harsh braking conditions. So that is a result that I wasn't entirely surprised with. But jumping back a little bit there, MG U9, LandCruiser 79, Amarok, Gladiator, all around that 47 metre mark. So you're sacrificing like 20% in stopping distance compared to a HiLux by choosing those vehicles, which is a big difference. And a lot of that will come down to tyre selection, especially in the case of the Amarok and the Ford Ranger. The tyres that they use on those vehicles just aren't great for stopping, and they aren't great for wet handling either. It's just a really odd tyre choice. If you then compare the Amarok to the Ranger was on highway terrains, Amarok was on the all-terrains. You've got a stopping distance difference there of about 3 metres. Super Duty on a different brand of tyre that they compared to what they use in their all-terrain specification. So it just shows you there that tyre selection is really important in terms of finding a tyre that is suitable for off-road driving, but also suitable for on-road driving as well. Now moving on to our laden tests. So we split them into two categories, those that were able to hit 100 k's an hour and then those that couldn't hit 100 but were able to hit 90. And just as a reminder as well, we used GPS for this instead of the car's speedo. GPS gives us a bit more accuracy. The car's speedo is always out by a little bit. You can watch a video we shot on that, and we sort of tested this out and explained it in that video, so there is a link in the description below. Now, in terms of those results, the ones that couldn't break 100 k's an hour, actually quite a few of them. Strangely, even though the Ford Ranger V6 Wildtrak broke 100 k's an hour, the Amarok didn't. Which is a bit weird given that with our unladen acceleration tests, the Amarok was actually marginally quicker than the Ranger Wildtrak V6 as well. So the only difference there between them is tyres and also where they're manufactured. Ranger, Thailand, Amarok from South Africa. So I don't know why there was a difference there, but Amarok couldn't break through 100. If we have a look at those that fit into the 0 to 90 category, the fastest there was the Amarok. Second fastest, the Ineos Grenadier Quartermaster, which strangely couldn't break 100. That thing was a missile out of the box, but it seemed to really slow down above 90 k's an hour and then just couldn't break through 100. So I don't know whether that's torque limiting or something sort of funny going on there. Then it sort of went through the rest of the group there until we got to the bottom of the pack, which was the Mazda BT50 XS, which is the 4-cylinder version at 26.5 seconds. And then the Ford Ranger Super Duty, 6 seconds quicker than that. It really does show you that there is quite a lot of variance there between these vehicles. And this is important to you because if you are going to be towing with a bigger load, the results here will dictate how effective your vehicle is when it comes to things like climbing steep terrain or overtaking. The slower the result here, the slower it's going to feel behind the wheel when you are actually towing something. So it is worth looking at these results from that lens. If you are looking at a tow vehicle, just keep in mind that if it is slow here from 0 to 90 with a 3 kilonewton load, it's going to be slow when you attach a big old caravan to the back of it as well. In terms of those that did break 100 k's an hour, fastest was the BYD Shark, 9.16 seconds, which is pretty incredible when you consider that some of the vehicles took longer than 9 seconds to reach 90, let alone breaking through 100 k's an hour. GWM Cannon Alpha plug-in hybrid, 10.52 seconds to 100. F-150 broke through, Ram 1500, Silverado broke through, and the Wildtrak just broke through there at just under 15.4 seconds. We ran the Ranger Wildtrak both in normal mode and tow mode to see if there was a difference. Tow mode was actually quicker, so it shows you that that mode is more effective when it comes to accelerating with a trailer attached. The other interesting one as well that I'll just quickly touch on is the Kia Tasman. I just get the feeling that that car, there's just something funny going on. If you look at the numbers on paper, they're quite low. The vehicle's not all that light. It shouldn't be as quick as it is, but it is actually quite sprightly. From 0 to 100, it is pretty fast compared to some of the other vehicles here in the segment. And then it was fairly confident when it came to towing as well. So kind of just shows you that it probably makes more, you know, if you were to attach it to a Dyne, which we probably should do, I reckon. Let us know in the comments section below if you want us to do that. I think that we'd find that its actual performance figures would be better than what they say on paper. Now onto the fuel economy. This is another important one for people wanting to buy one of these. Yes, it's great that you're going to have a car that accelerates really hard, but what's the point in that if it's going to cost you $1 million in fuel to run? So what we did here was we ran laps of the bowl unladen to get a baseline fuel economy. Then we ran laps of the bowl with the 3 kilonewtons attached to look at the percentage difference, because in reality, that is going to be the percentage difference you will experience when you're towing compared to it being unladen. The bigger the percentage, the more fuel it uses when it is towing. The best number there was one that I thought was a little bit dubious, the Ineos Grenadier at only 26% higher. It claims that it was using 16.4 litres per 100 k's laden. I don't believe that number, and I have a feeling that this car just needed more time on the bowl to actually establish an average fuel economy. A lot of cars will spit out an average fuel economy within 10 or 20 seconds if you're driving at highway speeds. There is a good chance the Grenadier's update timing was longer than that, and it didn't actually capture enough data. I highly doubt that it would have been using 16 litres per 100 k's with the trailer Dyne on. So this one's a bit of a funny result. Next best, Ford Ranger Wildtrak. So this is basically what we've experienced in the past as well. When you do attach a trailer using 112% more fuel than you would be if the vehicle was not towing. Now there is a bit of a caveat here. 13.2 is quite high for an unladen fuel economy figure. That is just the number that we got on the screen there. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, but it just seems a little bit high to me. Next up, the Shark. This is another funny one. It really is hard to understand how much fuel the vehicle is actually using, because it kind of gives you a figure that references battery usage in addition to the internal combustion engine, but you don't actually know how much physical fuel this thing has used. And the number is going to vary, because if you drive it when it's charged, you'll end up using the battery component first, then the internal combustion engine needs to move the vehicle and also charge the battery, which the other vehicles don't have to do. So in theory, it should actually use a lot more fuel than it was. This is claiming a fuel use of 12.4 litres per 100 k's, which indicates to me that we're probably still running on battery as opposed to it discharging the battery, which is what you'd experience after 50 odd k's of driving with the trailer attached. But either way, the number you see there on the screen is an increase of 117%, but I think if the battery did fully discharge, you'd find that number would be much higher. Onto the sort of standard cars, Chevy Silverado, 160% higher, so that went from a figure of 13.2 to 35, so a big increase, but to be expected given that it is a naturally aspirated V8 engine. If we go down to the bottom end of the scale, I'll quickly touch on the Jack T9. The number that car was giving us, I mentioned this in the video, was nonsense. It claimed to be using something like 12 litres per 100 k's with the laden run, which is just not possible given how hard the car was working compared to its unladen run. And that is probably another computer like the Ineos that didn't update or didn't have enough data to give you a representative figure. So we kind of disregarded that, because that number would actually be much higher in reality. The one that was the highest here at almost 300% more fuel use is the Navara, coming in at 24.3 litres per 100 k's compared to 6. Now the 6 litres per 100 k's is what you're going to be experiencing if you're just tootling around on the highway, which is actually a pretty healthy figure. But when you start sort of getting stuck into it, 24.3 litres per 100 k's, you're going to have a difference there. If we just look at the outright number in terms of which vehicle used the most just straight off, it is the Gladiator at 43.5 litres per 100 k's. So that V6 engine was absolutely singing, and unsurprisingly then it was Silverado F-150 and Ranger Super Duty. another one there that has to carry its own mass, plus have its engine absolutely singing to pull that load at 34 litres per 100 k's. So it is an interesting set of numbers there, and really it is up to you to look at those and better understand the percentage difference. While you might find a car is great for tootling around town, it doesn't use much there, you might want to look at how much it is using when it is towing a big load like this, because that will dictate how much fuel you're actually going to be using when you're towing a big caravan or a big trailer out in the country. And just to round out the trailer dyne section, we did also record coolant temperatures. Look, there's nothing sort of too crazy here, but you know, you can have a look at those numbers on the screen. We went from the LandCruiser 79, which was barely breaking a sweat at 85 degrees, all the way through to the Silverado that was at 105 degrees Celsius on coolant temps, and the Jack as well at 103. The other two that were over 100 were Gladiator and F-150. Everything else was sitting under that 100 mark. Obviously, this is only a short duration test. If you are going to be pushing the vehicle for a longer period, you're going to see these temperatures exponentially increase. But it is good to see at that bottom end of the scale, HiLux and LandCruiser, they have put a lot of effort into cooling capacity, which is really good to see. Now let's talk about our big trailer. And in fact, before we get onto the big trailer, and we will do a separate video on this, but it is important now to talk about GVMs and GCMs. It is not worth just having a look at what's advertised on a piece of paper and then selecting your vehicle based off that, because you might end up being over your limits. And this might be something you do without doing it intentionally. Just by looking at a piece of paper, you could end up over your limits because you haven't actually done the sums here. And the prime example here is one that kind of blew me away. It was the Silverado 1500 ZR2. I'm going to touch on a couple of examples here to give you an idea of why it is worth looking at this. ZR2 has a towing capacity of 4,200 kilos, which is great. But because of a very low GCM, for reasons unknown to me, you only have 64 kilos of payload capacity at 4,200 kilos of towing. That is a very light human being. So you literally cannot have more than 64 kilos in your vehicle if you decide to tow at 4,200. That is absurd. And that is something they don't make patently obvious on the spec page. And that is the difference here. So GVM is basically the weight of your vehicle and its payload. That is the limit of what it's allowed to be. So you calculate that by taking the GVM, which in this case is 3,300 kilos, subtracting the curb weight, which is the weight of the vehicle with all of its fluids, and then you have payload available. GCM, on the other hand, is your limit for the vehicle, its payload, and the towing capacity. So you cannot be above that figure, regardless of what your GVM is. And you can see here on the table, some of these numbers are pretty alarming, and it is the big dual cab utes that are embarrassing here. The Silverado, 64 kilos. The Ford F-150, 250 kilos. You can barely have anything there. Now, at the other end of the scale, this is where things get interesting. LandCruiser 79, incredible 1,380 kilos worth of payload. Remember, this is a single cab. If you do look at the dual cab though, it is fairly similar. It's still over 1,300 kilos. You then have to also subtract the mass of your tray as well. And that applies to the Ranger too. So this is another one of those funny sort of quirks of the way that these numbers are done. The Ranger Super Duty looks great on paper, but when you start actually doing the sums here, it doesn't quite afford you the capacities that you think it does. So even if you look at GVM, 4,500 kilos, you subtract the curb weight of the vehicle from that, the mass of your tray as well, which you need to add into that, you only really have maybe 300 or 400 kilos more payload than you do in a HiLux. So it is just worth keeping that in mind. If you do go up to 4,500 kilos worth of towing, you do have 825 kilos of payload, but remember, you then have to add the mass of your tray to that as well. So that sort of eats into that a little bit too. So again, don't just blindly go into this looking at the numbers. The Ranger, yes, it is definitely beefed up compared to a standard Ranger, but those numbers are worth looking at. Down at the other end of the scale, D-Max X-Terrain, same story. If you are basically towing at capacity, 330 kilos worth of payload, which is pretty abysmal. You see heaps of D-Maxes getting around there with enormous caravans on them, with everything but the kitchen sink in the tray as well. It is worth just keeping in mind that you will be very close to your limits and you can be over them pretty quickly there too. So yeah, keep those numbers in mind when you are shopping, because they definitely should play a role in how you pick your next dual cab ute for the purpose of towing. Now, what about our hill road? How did they all perform? Look,
I think there were some standouts there. There were also some cars that could be better. I went over all of that in the video, but the ones that kind of surprised me were the KGM. It was one of those vehicles that, you know, it didn't do that well when it was on cruise control. You could see we had that issue where the speed would just keep dropping. It refused for some reason to drop back through gears when it was in cruise control, and you ended up slowing all the way down. It then drops down a gear, accelerates, grabs the next gear and slows down one more time. But we did find that when we went onto our hill road that it actually performed reasonably well. For the price of the vehicle, you're actually getting a lot of value for money there. The plug-in hybrids did really well. The BYD Shark was just let down by a really firm ride, so aftermarket suspension is what I'd be going for if you do want to actually tow closer to the vehicle's limits there, but the acceleration was explosive. It was really impressive there. The Jeep Gladiator, strangely, was quite impressive as well. That V6, it just loves to rev, and that just gives you the confidence behind the wheel for that thing to accelerate. Felt fairly stable there as well. Jack T9, that was probably one of the disappointments here. It just doesn't have enough poke, and I think that is something they really need to work on. They do have a plug-in hybrid that it was just about to launch at the time we're recording this, so that is going to fix a lot of those problems in terms of the acceleration behind the wheel, but definitely something they need to look at there. Tasman, they fixed the issues there. No longer do we have stability control sort of flashing away or the brake controller doing funny things. So the towing stuff is solved there, which is excellent news. You really can't go wrong, both the Ford Ranger V6 and the Volkswagen Amarok V6. A great engine there that gives you a good middle ground between acceleration, performance and fuel economy. It's not going to blow the doors off your car when you accelerate, but it does give you the confidence you need behind the wheel to kind of accelerate to overtake and do the things that you want to be doing out in the country. HiLux, again, that thing, just a good all-rounder. You have heaps of punch, and that's partly thanks to the fact that it doesn't weigh a lot. If you look at all the updates that have been done to these dual cab utes over the years, they've certainly piled on the weight. They're all sitting around that 2.3 to 2.5 tonne mark. HiLux is still around that 2,000 kilo mark, so it does mean that you're still getting that peppy performance behind the wheel. They've got that mild hybrid system, or the 48 volt system there, that sort of gives you a little bit of a torque feel when the turbo's off boost. And then of course, rounding it off with the American pickup trucks. I mean, they absolutely walked away with a big trailer on the back. There was no sweat at all. So, and I loved the noise out of that Silverado. That was absolutely unreal. But it does show you that if you want to confidently tow with a big trailer, you can't look past them. Obviously, you can look past them if you get close to their limits, like with the Silverado there, but that Ram 1500 splits the difference. You've still got 600 kilos worth of payload when you're towing at 4,500. So you have heaps of capacity to work with there, and it shows you that you can have your cake and eat it too when it comes to having that explosive performance without having to limit yourself on that towing capacity. Right, so I should probably tell you what I would pick if I was spending my money and I wanted to tow this kind of load. This is in no particular order, but the ones that stood out for me for a number of reasons: the Toyota HiLux and the LandCruiser 79. These are vehicles that aren't really breaking a sweat towing this kind of capacity. They've been doing this for a long time. The engines are proven. If you're going to be heading out to the middle of Australia and you want something that's dependable, those two seem like absolute no-brainers when you look at all of these things combined. If you want something a little fancier, the Ranger V6 and the Amarok, I just think that engine gives you a lot of headroom in terms of overtaking power. You've got fuel efficiency there as well. It's just a nice engine, nice and smooth. It doesn't really sort of leave you wanting. It doesn't sort of blow you away, but it doesn't sort of disappoint you either. It is a really great middle ground. You can see why so many people pick that V6 diesel engine for their towing needs. And then the big American pickup trucks, they just get the job done. You stick a trailer on there, you don't ever have to think about whether you're going to have enough go to get up and move. It just hauls regardless of what's going on. So they are really impressive as well. If you don't want to spend an arm and a leg, probably the one that stood out to me was the KGM Musso. Yes, it does have that issue with the cruise control being a bit funny, but ultimately some aftermarket suspension, and you've got a car that is excellent value for money there that is really hard to go past. I haven't mentioned the Ranger Super Duty. I just don't think it has enough pep to be towing a big load. You're driving it without a load, it feels slow. You stick a big trailer on it and it feels absolutely slow. And that to me is not something I want to experience when I'm trying to get up and move and overtake people. So that's probably a vehicle that
you've got to test drive with your trailer on, make sure you're comfortable with it. Maybe some people will be perfectly fine with it, but for me personally, I want to know that when I step on the throttle, I'm going to be able to overtake and that I have a predictable experience. This is just predictably slow every time I drive it, so just something worth keeping in mind. And then of course you've got the plug-in hybrids, both the BYD Shark and the Cannon. They just do a good job in terms of giving you that reassurance behind the wheel. Now, if you can be bothered charging them, I saw a post on the internet the other day of a bloke that was towing something with his BYD Shark, and he was pulled up at a charger, and it just looked overly complicated. I don't think anyone wants to be thinking about charging their vehicle while they're towing a caravan. So, if you do have predictable charging available to you, yes, it's great, but just keep in mind that you do have a small internal combustion engine there, both for the Cannon and the BYD Shark. If you do run the battery down, which is what you're likely to be doing if you're towing over a long distance, you are just going to have a fairly small engine left over there. Yes, you will have some reserve from the battery pack that will give you the kick that you need, but you're always going to be consuming more fuel. There is absolutely no way to get around the physics of this. When that battery drains, which it will after 50 or 100 kilometers worth of driving with your big trailer, you are then going to be using petrol to then charge your battery to give you that reserve and also move the vehicle. And in the case of the Shark with a 1.5 litre engine, it is going to be working overtime. I haven't driven the Shark Performance with the 2 litre. I am keen to drive that, so I'll reserve my judgment till I drive that, because that could be a bit more of a sensible option. The Cannon seems to present as the better of the two when it comes to towing though, because you do have a little bit more headroom there with that internal combustion engine. And hey, by the way, are you looking at buying one of these dual cab utes? Well, we can help you out with that. We have a free service that will help get you a better deal. I can't promise that we'll get you a better deal, but we can definitely try. Doesn't cost you anything. We won't spam you. We will just try and get you a better deal. If you're buying one anyway, you may as well give it a crack. Scan the QR code on the screen to be connected with one of our Australian staff at the Brisbane office who will try and get you a good deal on a new dual cab ute. Righto, so that has been the biggest mega test we've ever done for towing. It was an absolute gruel. So big shout out to the team for helping put all this together, to Sean and Eagle for shooting and editing all of this. It has taken ages to put together. So I do hope you appreciate all the work that has gone into this. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. Is there anything you think we should do differently next time? Any cars you want us to include? Obviously there were the vehicles that we asked for but didn't get, unfortunately, but we tried to get as many as we possibly could for this. So let us know your thoughts. If you did enjoy this video, please make sure you like it and you share it with your mates. But until next time, take it easy.